Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
A pedigree cat in good hands. Age 9 years. She's a mountain cat. Eats premium dry food. Call the number. Maria shuddered. She was so struck by the photo of a white cat, which looked from the phone screen with the eyes of her favorite. The cat Shirley, with whom the girl was inseparable since childhood, recently died, and the cat in the picture was incredibly like him. The girl read the ad again, then gazed at the image of the kitty, thought and dialed the indicated number. Hello, hello. I'm calling from the ad about your cat. I'd love to see her. You see, she looks just like my dead cat. You'd think we cloned him. Hello, you're welcome to visit us anytime. The woman on the other end of the line had a nice, low-pitched voice. I think you'll like my Marquesa. She's very smart. Maria noticed that the woman seemed sad or tired. It turned out to be a short drive right halfway to Maria's work. Arranged a time to meet. Maria didn't want to put things off and drove to the specified address right after work the very next day. A strange excitement swept over her, as if meeting someone else's cat was something special and decisive. When she found the right entrance, she stood for a minute, inhaled deeply and resolutely went inside. There was a tiny rug by the door of the right apartment. It was clean. She pressed the bell, and a very thin woman of small stature opened the door. Good evening. It's me, Maria. You remember from the ad? Yes, of course. Come in, please. I invited a guest. The woman walked forward. Maria noted that her gait was not firm, like a completely alive person, an underground atom of the corridor. Passed into the room. In a small apartment of the old type stood hospital sterility and emptiness. No furniture, no appliances hung on the chairs or scattered clothes not personal without girls, or those not too necessary things, which and promolu dwelling coziness. Even the curtains on the windows looked poor and temporary. From some cheap and frivolous matter, this house would appear uninhabitable. If his mistress in a white kerchief had not sat down opposite Maria on a small sofa, having previously made an inviting gesture not without shyness. Maria looked at her. That looked haggard, bloodless face, as if the countenance from an icon, make yourself comfortable, said meanwhile the woman Adriana, and here is our Marquise. She let her hand to Maria immediately at the entrance, already saw this incredible picture. The large white cat was sitting on the only chair by the sofa where the hostess and Maria were sitting. She looked like a majestic statue. The void around it especially enhanced the impression. The cat looked at the girl, studying it first, and then shifted her gaze to the woman in the headscarf, as if demanding an explanation from her. Maria, too, was scrutinizing Marquise. Hello, Marquise, she said. Quiet. You are very beautiful. Tears came to her eyes and the girl was silent. Adriana nodded understandingly, pulling herself together. Maria turned to her. Are you leaving or? She smiled sadly, but it could be taken that way. She remained silent for a moment. It was evident that the explanation was not easy for her. I love her very much, but Adriana slowly pulled the headscarf off her head and exposed a completely smooth skull. Oncology. The last course of chemotherapy was in vain. There's no point in having surgery. Not 6 months left. Maria, stunned, remained silent. That's why her voice is so awful, her face so pale. That's what the scarf hides. What can I say? You know, I've grown tired of the thought. Adriana went on. Is it true that one gets used to everything? At first, the news is like a lightning strike, and then you have to get on with your life. You can't go to the coffin alive. She grinned bitterly. The two women felt sympathy for each other from the first words and continued to talk about some unimportant things. Strangers seemed to have nothing in common. But two lonely people needed warm companionship. Meanwhile, Marquise jumped from her chair and approached them, lost her feet Adriana, then raised her muzzle to Maria and flashed. Friends, Adriana predicted and smiled. But you know, Maria, it's complicated. I think you'll understand. I have to go to the hospital soon. Until then, I'd like to keep Marcus with me for 2 weeks. Do you mind? And you'll come over after work. You'll get used to each other. Of course I don't mind. Let him stay, of course. Maria left to visit her new friend and her cat during the agreed time. She was anxious, but at the same time lightened up after this meeting. This evening filled her with memories. With all her heart sympathizing with Adriana, she involuntarily compared her fate with someone else's. Thought of loneliness. The girl realized that attachment to an animal is not a bliss, not the whim of a sick person. Her cat Shirley, who had literally grown up with her in her old age, had become quite infirm. Coming in the evening from the realtor's office, where she worked as a lawyer to formalize transactions, Maria, sadly looking into his sad eyes, watched almost human clumsy movements, his paws, which Soen wanted to call pedagogical. And no vitamins could help him anymore. Veterinarian, to which Maria in despair took the pet, only sympathetically sighed and offered, "Well, Davabushka, your cat is still long-lived. I am not God, and give him a second life cannot, but to alleviate his suffering can." He cast a glance at Maria, whose eyes rolled involuntary tears. "It'll be easier for you. One injection, and the patient will go into a soft, eternal sleep. Believe me, it's the best thing we can do for him." Maria refused. She walked home. The two of them stoically endured the difficult months, without words understanding each other. The cat lay there exhausted, not wanting to eat. He wouldn't eat. Only his gaze was understanding or goodbye. The girl cried, turning away. She was sure that Fluff would feel her despair if she showed him her tears. And one evening, when the mistress came home, found her Fluffy. The comrade had already calmed down for good, as if he tried to ease the suffering of his mistress. Maria spared neither strength nor time to take the fragmented and lost soft on the left pet's body to a distant abandoned house to bury him near her favorite lilac bushes, where once long ago they had spent many happy hours with the whole family. She was left all alone. The girl was coming back from the half-destroyed fence of the old daksha, limping a little and talking to herself. Now there was no one to talk to. We have to do something. We have to live somehow. Somebody's cat and somebody's best friend. It's not my fault I'm alone. I've got to live. So talking to herself, she reached the entrance, where the train stopped under the clatter of wheels and conversations. She looked out the dirty window and decided to take the cat. In the province, a lonely person can be seen at once. Neighbors know almost everything about him, everyone in sight. The fate of a loner in a big city is unenviable, especially if the character of the person is peculiar. Maria was a kind and intelligent girl, but the childhood trauma left her with a slight, almost imperceptible literacy on one leg. And here with this complex, she never managed to cope in the distant youth of a romantic young lady. She had the misfortune to fall in love with a kid from the neighborhood, Ethan, black hair and swarthy. He looked like a gypsy. He had incredible charm. They call it charisma nowadays. He was a gung-ho, desperate soccer player. A couple of yard games have not left yet, and Maria could stealthily watch the boys, pretending that she was interested in the game and not one of the players. Girlfriends and petite boys were squealing, yelling. Maria, too, was in this crowd of admirers and caught Ethan's every move. Dark-skinned bodies took off in a run. The boy's supple torso was a source of admiration. Ethan was always surrounded by a crowd of younger kids. He was their idol. I don't know his character or his habits. Ethan. Maria fell in love just with his appearance, so lively, filled with vitality. Boyish face with dark eyebrows, was thin and spiritualized. In moments of play or lively conversation, Maria wanted to stare at him and just admire him. She stood at the window overlooking Ethan's driveway for a long time, trying to track his exit and jump out as if to the neighboring department store for groceries, exactly at the moment when Ethan would approach her house. Too often, she started to get in the way of the boy. At 13, girls still do not know the sense of proportion. What can I do? Hey, you. He called out to her one day. What's your name? Maria felt like she'd been doused with ice water. That's the moment when the boy he adored noticed her. But as he noticed, just her temple. She was the one who ran straight home and didn't even cry, only stopped looking in Ethan's direction. After that, the girl would run through the yard as quickly as possible. If there was a soccer game, Maria never let herself think about men again. Complexes acquired in adolescence often remain in a person for life. Her parents were a late child, and they looked upon her as a child. Not really that, delving into her mental space, her childhood crush remained unnoticed by anyone. And brought up on books, Maria closed herself off in a cozy hallway of music and novels of household chores near her mother. "Daughter, don't you want to go to the movies?" Her mother, Wendy, asked her. "And our savings bank girls told us a new movie is going on. People are coming in droves." Being aware of the news from her young colleagues, the old lady began to worry that her daughter was always alone. She felt somewhat guilty about the time Maria fell off her bike and hurt her leg. Although Wendy and her husband had then done everything possible for their daughter, her mother's heart ached. Of course, the blame for the aftermath fell entirely on the doctors who sent them home after surgery and treatment, saying it would all go away in time. Working out, sea, sun, and good nutrition will help. The elderly couple took their daughter to the sea as they lived frugally and could spend for the sake of her health, and nutrition was out of the question. All the best, Maria. All in all, Maria was the one unique flower in the family garden. Wendy herself married quite late for the daughters still, and the girl's daughter spoke parents for their good modest accountant, who until 40 years old took care of his sick mother and remained single. The new family took shape. The spouses were completely satisfied with each other. The birth of a daughter was a happiness, unexpected and almost unreal. Therefore, Maria father unconditionally just adored, and Wendy even allowed herself to dream of grandchildren. Having successfully graduated from the law school of the local university, Maria began to work, changed several places. She took root, oddly enough, in a noisy and crowded real estate company, helping employees and clients in drawing up documents and guiding them through the authorities. Screening girls, young boys running through the office, were workmates, but nothing more. Maria was like something out of the last century. Big gray eyes, dark waves, hair, and a tall, slender figure. But the main thing, of course, was in her main movements and manner of holding herself, as if she had just stepped out of a picture of the life of counts and countesses. Hence the coldness and restraint of her kept her from coming too near. She was always on a first-name basis with people. At arm's length, the life of the family flowed peacefully and softly. Parents very quickly, one after another, departed into the next world. Very modest, inconspicuous people who carried their responsibilities all their lives as they should. And when they grew old, just as obediently and peacefully passed away one after another, as if they were tied. So Maria stayed with Pushkin and lived quietly, not suffering from the lack of relatives and friends. After all, there was a good friend from early childhood, and gave her their warmth and affection. Now she had a new relationship ahead of her. Maria ran to Adriana a day or two later. "Hello, Adriana. It's Maria. Can I come by again tonight?" she called before leaving her office. It was always like this. Rada treated her to tea from her meager stock. Maria, seeing the embarrassment of her new friend's position, brought her a little so as not to embarrass her. She was an excellent worker and earned quite well for her position. Deals were made a lot, despite the crises and cataclysms that abounded in the last 10 years, and a good lawyer. Both clients and realtors appreciated, but each time the guest was convinced not in the horse's fodder. Adriana ate like a bird, and most often she had no appetite at all. The only food she accepted with joy was food for her favorite cat. Here Maria did not skimp on the most premium. Oh, how timely just sprinkled her last. Adriana's eyes lit up at the sight of a bag for Marquise. The woman immediately looked away in embarrassment, embarrassed by her poverty and not admitting to it. The Marquise should get used to me. Maybe she'll realize I'm not unhealthy and will accept food from me, Maria explained to her innkeeper, smiling at Adriana. She didn't want to embarrass the sick. "And where did you get such a gorgeous cat?" she inquired. Adriana smiled weakly. It was evident that the memory pleased her. "Oh, that's a very interesting story," she stretched out, "and funny and reddish," and at the same time she was silent, recovering in her memory the details of that long-ago day. There was always music playing in our house. Parents were different. Sometimes they partied till they dropped. Sometimes my mom liked to cry, even cry, finding some far-fetched reasons. Mom had no reason to cry, I assure you, Maria. Daddy worshipped her, but Mommy was a real Carmen. You know, hot, passionate, and terribly, terribly jealous. And my parents loved to go to the theater and were regulars at Philharmonic concerts. And Dad had the misfortune to praise one of our local singers. She sang the main parts. She had a beautiful voice. Her name was Molly. Mom, of course, had to show her temper. She made a scene. It was only at home that my sister and I laughed. But Daddy wasn't laughing. It was Mom's way of asserting herself, you see. It may have looked silly from the outside, but Mommy knew what she was doing. Our intelligent, mild-mannered Daddy was also asserting his own importance. What about such a beautiful girl? His wife is jealous of him, and even to whom the prima donna of the opera stage. It means that he is worth it. That means he's a real man. My God, how touching they were in their funny quarrels. And how did they make up afterward? Dad would sneak in a huge bouquet. Mom was starting to play the role of the perfect hostess who never was and suffered solely on Dad's orders. Adriana's bloodless face became lively at the telling of the story. It was felt that she was oblivious and distracted from her painful condition. Memories of her loved ones gave her strength. Only breathing was difficult. The woman took breaks to take a break from her emotional narrative. And then Mom went quite far in her marital zeal, wanting to prove that she was ready to do anything for Dad. Suddenly, she herself offered to approach that singer and present her with a bouquet. Dad was confused, but he couldn't contradict Mom. You know, the husband's a tomboy. It's great for the family and the kids. After all, in the main, Daddy never conceded to anyone in the work in friendship. And in his love for Mom, he was faithful. He acted only according to his beliefs and principles. And here they are, Mom, with an important look Dad with a gorgeous bouquet go after the performance in the restroom of the actress. And there's not a single admirer at the door. Not even the most pathetic bouquet under the door, the actress in whose honor just exploded with applause. The hall sat in a corner, alone holding a cute little white kitty on her lap and wiping her tears. It turned out that the other day Molly leaves to her husband in Israel. Planned her benefit, but the wife of the chief director of mediocrity and envy of nice did not want Molly to receive a farewell ovation. She secretly warned all the servants of the theater, who bribed, who simply frightened of dismissal, and the servants simply put the intended prima, bouquets, and baskets in the backyard. Not only that, intrigue, I hope, after the departure of Warshawskaya to get her role by intrigues, achieved the cancellation of the benefit actress, telling about it completely strangers to her people. Burst into tears on the shoulder of our mother. And the daughter. My God, how is she? How are you? Yes, you are a golden voice, my dear Mommy, hugged and sobbed with her. Daddy did not know how to calm this couple drowning in tears, but called someone from the closet and asked to bring champagne from the cupboard. When the parents came home at midnight, and the best friend of the singer's mother, Antu Warshawski, at her mother's arms, sat that same white kitty, and left her living mascot. A new soulful friend, so we had Marquise. Mommy, with her inherent passion, was raring to fight, and this time was supported by both Daddy and us. She arranged a grandiose scandal in the theater, disgraced the mean wife of the editor-in-chief for the whole city. But it was too late. Molly didn't leave from the community window. We loved her so much. You see how she's become just a marquesa. Now she reminds us of three good people. Idea, who also recently passed away, and her parents. And this is why I love her so much and cherish Adriana. You could see it in her ever-changing breasts and that breathing. But her eyes were shining. A smile never left her lips. It was the first time I saw her so lively, almost cheerful, and I was glad of it. I can no longer provide her with the same care as before. Adriana repented. You see, Maria, it's empty. Well, I still have the strength to sell everything I had. I want to leave behind a vacant apartment so I don't have to go to the trouble of selling it. You have to face the truth. Are you a very strong person, Adriana? Said Maria, lowering her eyes. Very decent. That's the whole story of our family, said Adriana. The family is gone, and the story is over. Her pale lips even shifted slightly into the semblance of a smile. And my life will soon be over. I'd like to end it in a nice way, but nothing comes to mind. And I don't have the strength, let alone the means. Edward wanted to leave Andrew some money. He was worried about the apartment being so empty. But my boy, well done, he didn't take it. He's too much of an honest, selfless man, like everyone else in the family. But I'm glad that at least my apartment will remain to my nephew. He will sell it anyway, to expand the housing in my town. It's probably the least I can do to thank him. A pure soul. How does he take care of me? He's been the only one who's kept me going these last few years. Isn't he going to move in with you? I asked Maria. He's still working after graduation. And to live with a sick aunt is not the greatest happiness. I'm even glad he won't have time to do it. The stuff and the apartment is all that. That's not the main thing, but I was so scared about Marcus. I love her more than anything in the world. She's a cat, the only creature dear to me. Marquise has been with me all through my illness. Can you imagine? She comforted me, laid next to me on my sore spot after chemo. And when I was literally turned inside out, guarded me by the bathroom door, only calmed down when I crawled out of there powerless and delirious to the point of bed. And the hospital was waiting for me. Now I will be calm for my beautiful girl. You will certainly not offend her. The cat looked attentively at the two women and calmly lay in its usual place, as if it fully understood their conversation and sympathized with them. It smelled cozy and warm. Maria began to approach the cat more and more often, who was already allowing the stranger to pet herself. When people have little time to socialize and all the deadlines are shortened, they get closer much faster than in normal life. Adriana was in a hurry. She wanted to talk about her own. The young girl turned out to be a soulful and attentive listener. Gradually, she got to know Adriana's story completely. Young Adriana came to the city to study. She lived with her older sister and brother-in-law, who were already well settled here, working and raising a sweet son. Adriana adored her nephew's baby, and he reciprocated. But what can be said? But to sit on each other's heads in a small apartment of young spouses, and even with a small child, was shameful. 6 months later, Adriana moved into a student dormitory. Why are you leaving? Her sister resented her. Anna is as thin and white as Adriana. I have hot soup at home anytime. There's a balcony for you. Please, Jacob, you tell her. She addressed her husband, who was as young as she was. He was totally immersed in his favorite job. Not much at home, of course. Technical high school teacher, not even a school teacher. He was required to immerse himself in 2 areas at once: educating children and organizing scientific work and practice with them. Jacob came tired and did not really get involved in domestic affairs, but the recovery of the body needed, and he in good conscience, admittedly, would be happy to more often visit his favorite wife in the marital bed. And secretly, he was also waiting for his student to move in. It's a young business. Stay. Hold the young husband, but not too convincingly. She did, and I didn't regret it at all. Whoever hasn't lived in such a town is not a student. A girl from the provinces had an easy disposition. She excelled in her studies. But most of all, she was attracted to the section of tourism, in which there were many strong and as cheerful as herself. Boys and girls, especially guys. One of them caught her eye. Tall, a head taller than Adriana herself, mighty blonde. The name Edward seemed strange, but it didn't fit a regular guy with big hands and obviously familiar with a shovel paddle, or even a hunting rifle. And he's like a normal student in general. Quietly questioned Adriana his classmates, as everyone answered her. In his studies, of course, he was diligent and hardworking, but sometimes he would give away an idea. Last week, I offered to replace one tricky thing in the cleaning on the machine, and it worked like a charm. Imagine, even our professor was surprised he didn't think of it himself. And really this one, as he was called by his friends, gave out a proposal, which was so eager to try and practice. Technical University. But even here, such bright heads are not often found. And in the student trial gathered a core of the same thorough, thoughtful guys. No one was surprised when later they stayed together and set up the production of household appliances. During camping trips, it was often Adriana who found herself next to him. Or maybe she was the one who inadvertently fell into his arms. He was so big and handsome. He seemed strong and dependable. In fact, he was. No, he wasn't. The tough guy would stop the newcomer and go to fix a peg for the tent. And that's how he tried it. Took a knife from his buddy and showed him how to pinch small chips and dry wood to quickly start a fire. And when he ruled a sprain with one sharp movement, on the mountain trail along the very line, he became almost a god to her. She had stayed up all night, grateful, remembering the warmth of his hands on her ankle and reimagining his hair in front of her. Her leg ached, but she could still make out his curls. It must be true what they say about the rescue becoming special to the one who saved him. And so it was with Adriana. He was now taking her everywhere. He could call out to her from afar. The hard route ran over your leg today. You hear that? Well, it's axe porridge today. He teased her when it was her turn to make porridge. So gradually, imperceptibly, he became closer and closer. She sang and couldn't believe her happiness. However, she did not give any sign by the end of the hike. The comrades, who noticed their not quite usual affection for each other, began to shout them both these jars. It was exactly affection, because they walked together as if attached to each other. And the two bright heads were always glimpsing each other. When will you call me to the wedding? The sacramental question was finally asked at the end of the hike. Oh, really? What wedding? Adriana blushed. Here, lie down, order a cafe and we'll call you there. Edward joked. There was no wedding. What kind of wedding for students? But we went to the registry office. They drank champagne to the guitar, sang, and had fun. Soon, Edward graduated from the institute, and a year later, Adriana and Edward defended themselves, got their diplomas, rented a place to live, and started a modest, as in student life. Instead of a couple at the institute, they worked in their cooperative, as it was then customary to call a private enterprise, no matter how big or small. Edward turned out to be not such a strong technical genius as it seemed in his student days, but he got to know such good fellows who could do incredible things in a couple of days. His decency and responsibility impressed almost everyone who was acquainted with him. And when he made his case for cooperation, many of that old guard willingly went. Their time had come precisely at the moment when industrial production was being destroyed in the country. The adventurism of youth, bringing friends together. An idea. The gusto and fervor were not yet wasted. The forces moved them. How brave are young people who do not assume failure and Oblomov. This ignorance allows them to act without regard to authority. Listen, old man, we're solving a question. You should run up. No one can solve it but you understand? It's a matter of honor, old man. And the old man drove, walked, called back. Even though Edward never promised him anything, never lured him in, he was just a man of action. Talents flocked like butterflies to the light. They all wanted to do the real thing, to break a sweat. They wanted to give it their all. They wanted it to be interesting. So that steam would come out of your ears, and then a sigh of relief would burst out of your chest. We found it. We did it. Ed said. What did you do to lure me in, tell me? I mean, he's a talent. He'll win the Nobel Prize if he puts his inventions together and shows them off. And you keep him in a chicken coop where he can't breathe. I'm not thinking, I'm thinking. You don't understand anything about sausage trimmings, Googled Ed, grabbing his little wife by the shoulders and putting her in front of him. He didn't come to the office. He's come to us, understand? Well, how do you want it? And people shouldn't be working under these conditions. Adriana spoke. Let's calculate how much we need for new windows. Furniture again to renew. Well, these computers are state-of-the-art. They're standing on shabby, almost dumpy desks. Come on, I'll order them tomorrow. Sign right here. That's scratching my thick hair. Signing sometimes with elephants. What's a dump? Adriana, for God's sake. Your son-in-law took them from the school desks. At least don't say that to him. My sister's husband really did spend years directing the floor at a vocational college, and on an acquaintance helped and written off from the risky desks of his. How to resist the kindred charm? The two families lived amicably, meeting at the dinner table on holidays. But not so long ago, Anna and Jacob moved to a neighboring town, where their son studied at the institute. Adriana, although she was not in the specialty of the accounting center, from the first days was engaged in the payroll of employees and other small matters, to which Edward did not reach hands. A woman's eye sees the world differently, and sometimes the wife could notice Edward's nose and his shortcomings, which he marveled at. Wow, I wouldn't have realized. The years went by, then flew by, and they were the same amorous little panic, head to head, solving life's problems on vacation. The spouses would go hiking for old memories, mastering the most difficult routes. One day, they had to interrupt the hike at the most unexpected moment. The son-in-law had a heart attack. He died overnight. My nephew was only in his first year of study, no comrades, no life experience. The sister in the new town had no time to recognize anyone. In addition, in the terrible grief of confusion, the funeral chores fell on Edward's shoulders. Adriana comforted her sister as best she could. "You want us to take you back. We'll find you a comfortable apartment. You'll get a job. There's always a part-time job at Edward's office. You'll be fine, Anna. I can't go back there. Don't you understand?" I was in tears. "Anna, every time I see you, my heart bleeds for the good times we had. Why did you ever think of moving? He could have worked at his college, quietly. No, he's got to go into manufacturing. These plans are stressful." And Anna cried again and reread, unable to talk about anything else. Edward had gone home. Business was not waiting. Adriana stayed behind to help her sister and support her at least for the first time. She was well aware that Jacob had no chance of survival. That was what the doctors had explained after the autopsy. It was such a case that a heart defect does not manifest itself in any way during a person's lifetime, and it is impossible to be saved from its manifestation without knowing about it in advance. Anna, however, did not want to hear this. She fixated on unbelievable options to save her husband and blamed herself. She took almost all her sister's worries upon herself and held awake for 9 days as she remained indifferent. Why was Anna saying all this? Would it bring Jasoba back? I started crying again. It was also impossible to sort out the dead man's personal belongings in front of her. She would just get hysterical. Adriana and Andrew tried to deal with this burdensome matter as quickly as possible. When did Anna go to the cemetery? She went to Jacob's grave every day and came back in tears. Neither her son nor her sister could resist. How can you keep a man from love? A trifle to the dead. No matter how much I try to help, but everyone must survive the death of a loved one himself. Adriana had work waiting for her. Edward could use the support and care of his wife, and here Anna must come out of her depression in time, and the absence of her sister will only be to her benefit. Otherwise, she will live in her fragile shell of grief, not taking in any worries from a fellow's determination and concern for the student's son. If Andrew does not break through this wall between mother and everyday life, then no one else will. That was what Adriana assumed. With a heavy heart, she left her 2 loved ones. But now lonely people, long conversations, and doing things together with her nephew had brought them even closer together. And now Adriana made daily calls not only to her sister, but also to Andrew. "Oh, Aunt Adriana," Andrew lamented. "Mom is unrecognizable. She's turning into an old lady. Now she's started going to church. Can you imagine? Praying, baptizing. She even smells like someone else's heavy odor. I don't know what to do." They say that daughters often repeat the fate of their sister's mother, Adriana. Anna exactly repeated the death of her husband, drove her into such depression that the woman began to melt before her eyes. The son did not know how to make his mother enjoy life. Moving mother became lethargic, without initiative. Everything was falling out of her hands. Constant gloomy mood and helplessness possessed her, so the weeks dragged on for months. At first, Anna hardly went to work. It distracted her a little and kept her going. But one day came when she simply did not get up in the morning. The doctor, who was called by her exhausted son, gave a referral for tests. But in the morning, the mother lay listless and didn't want to get up. Andrew called his aunt and son-in-law. Immediately, the relatives arrived and were amazed at how much Anna had given up. She was almost an old woman with a faded look, dressed in anything. She spent most of her time in silence, sitting somewhere and looking at herself. Shocked, the couple decided that they would come every weekend, wasting their energy and money on a short trip. As soon as the work week was over, Adriana and Edward drove to Anna's house, taking her out to a restaurant in the countryside. Her sister even began to smile when she remembered the childish pranks or words of little Andrew. But no matter what her loved ones did for her, then Anna returned again and again to her once again private state. Soon things got even worse. Anna began to fall down on the spot. "Son, I can't see anything." With horror, she said to Andrew when he came back from class and hurriedly prepared lunch, "Would you at least read me what is written in the newspapers?" But then Veda was forgotten again and sat aloof in thoughts unknown to the boy. In the meantime, her son was doing his best, growing older and stronger, calling the line, and in an almost rapturous voice his aunt said, "I got a part-time job in a restaurant as a waiter. Sometimes I get tips. I'd really like to continue. Thank you, Uncle Edward, for your help, of course. But I like to have more fun. I'm not the only one here. There's more of us." Andrew's voice sounded cheerful, and he didn't want to object. Let the boy husband decided to marry the money that Edward sent. Of course, enough. But Andrew was a man. He dreamed of independence. Turns out he was too early for that. Soon the part-time jobs were gone. His mother's health required his constant attention. It was clear that it was not depression. Soon Anna was admitted to the hospital. A terrible thing was revealed. They found a tumor in the brain, which was pressing on the optic nerves. The disease progressed so quickly that there was no point in surgery. Within 2 months, Anna was literally burnt out. It was not clear whether it was because of the disease that she became depressed or because of her worries after the death of her husband. The tumor developed so quickly. Andrew was left without a father and mother, and it was necessary to finish his studies. Andrew told him, "Edward, study hard, don't think about bad things. You can't get your parents back. You have a life to live, and you must live successfully and happily," Adriana added. "Yes, I must. Happily," Edward confirmed seriously. "Don't worry about money. We'll also send you the amount you need. Finish your studies. Welcome to our company. In the meantime, all weekends and vacations are waiting for you. And once again, we'll be traveling with sad worries. Again, the packing up of the closest person. Memorial tables, candles." Adriana found it very difficult. Even more painful for Andrew. Without a family, her favorite boy, so kind, so tenacious, so diligent. "Andrew, it's okay. You know, when kids bury their parents, it's when parents have to lose their kids. That's terrible. So take it for what it's worth. Well, some people have to do it sooner. Some people have to do it later." She kissed him on the top of his head, tilted his fair head toward her, and tried not to cry. If only he had a girl, it wouldn't be so depressing to leave. But no, he'd given himself to taking care of his mother. He had no time for relationships. "Yes, I understand. Aunt Adriana, I'm fine." Andrew calmed her down and hid his eyes too. Now they understood a lot about their mother's and sister's behavior, but there was nothing they could do. Adriana tried as much as possible to give her nephew the warmth he received from his mother. How unfortunate it was for the nephew. The couple had to go to their home. They could not live because of the young man. They could not talk in the evenings about anything but Anna's death. Maybe it was a fatal mistake. Adriana wondered aloud. Maybe Anna should have gone back. At least here, we're already settled, both people and town. Adriana will take her death anyway. Edward said sadly, "You realize that, don't you? She'll wait until you're in the fall. She will deceive, but she will steal the one who must die on this day at this hour. You can explain it however you want." Yes, Adriana understood. She thought again of her mother, who couldn't get over her husband's death. Her parents were not a quiet, friendly couple. Their relationship was reminiscent of Italian movies. The jealous mom was always suspicious of her father, calling back to work if he was running late. The father was patient and silent for a long time. Then he exploded. The girls, Anna and Adriana, would cover their ears. Then the parents, as if nothing had happened, decided to go to the theater, to visit, or to a banquet, quickly packed up and left for the South, entrusting their daughters with an independent existence. The girls laughed at their parents' eccentricities, because they knew how they adore each other's first words when Dad returned from work were, "Where's Mom? Is she home?" Mother, taking off her shoes in the hallway, already asked, "Where's Daddy already come?" And when the father fell under the car drunk, slack-jawed, the mother barely lived without him for a year, then quietly died in her sleep, not giving trouble to her daughters. It seems that with the death of her husband, she completely lost the source of life, did not raise her voice, did not show any passion, and was a smooth, boring aunt. And she hadn't even retired yet. If Anna didn't have Adriana and Adriana didn't have Anna, it's hard to imagine how they would have borne the loss of their parents. Everyone. Sisterly attachment is stronger than the closest friendship. After all, sisters have known each other all their lives, ever since the youngest of them was born. And now Adriana's nephew, Andrew, was second only to her husband. Adriana herself was not given a child by God. In their youth, the couple did not suffer about it at all. They had enough of each other's company. They were never bored. So many interesting things around, so many topics for conversation and discussion. The most interesting thing was that they were together or near each other day and night. But never did Adriana have the urge to move away from her husband of what is called long-married ladies to take a break from him. Apparently, Edward felt the same way. "You're not bored with me?" Adriana asked him. "You've got such smart men in your office. I'm not much good." "You have such smart men in your office." Edward laughed. "And I'm not so good here either." He would approach her with rags, blonde hair, and say, "How much paint waste at other wives to paint gray hair, and we save money. And the main thing is that it's forever. Where will we spend the savings?" The wife was picking up on it. "Come on, Andrew, let's buy something fashionable. Let the girls hang on him." "Let them." Edward waved his hand. "Remember, I had sneakers and fancy jeans. If it hadn't been for those clothes, you wouldn't have interfered with me." And they kept teasing each other and goofing off. It was like it hadn't been years since they'd been romantically in love. Life is just as beautiful despite the time. Sunshine, green trees, mountains if you drive a bit in the right direction. When Adriana decided to take her women's health seriously and try her luck. On her birthday, it turned out it was too late for her to worry about it. Perhaps some hereditary reason had played a role. Or maybe the long-distance hikes had produced such a result that children were no longer possible. "All right," Edward waved his hand. When she told him about the unfortunate doctor's visit. Not everyone has to be a parent, and not everyone can have one after all. Andrew was being sly. Maybe he just wanted to reassure his wife so she wouldn't have an inferiority complex. Later, Adriana would conjure up this moment many times. But how do you know how the husband really felt? And what good would it do? You can't get back what you've lost. They've traveled to so many countries. It's easier to travel comfortably now, and they still go camping. Like 15 years ago. This summer, Andrew went on an internship. "We'll take advantage of the moment." Suggested to his wife, Edward, "Wherever we've been. Let's go mountain hiking. Look at the route." "Oh, that's a whole new direction." "It's my dream." Adriana was excited. Light, slim, like a girl. She was pretty and still young-looking. Her health had never let her down until then. But this summer, Lena had a hard time going on a hike. Already on the train, she felt short of air. As she stepped onto the platform, her heart clenched. "You look pale." Edward was worried. "Woman's Day." "I don't think so. I'm just being simple-minded." I hastened to refute his suspicions. "Adriana, it'll pass in the air." "What's the air like here?" And she put her face to the fresh breeze. The climb up the mountain again brought her difficulty in breathing, and she felt dizzy and dizzy again. It seemed to have passed only a little, but she was already powerless and sat down right on the path on a large boulder. "Let's go down," Edward said sharply. He helped his wife up and dragged her down. The descent took a long time. The couple stopped from time to time so that Adriana could rest. At the bottom, she was put to bed. But her strength recovered too slowly. The injections given by the paramedic on duty did not help. Adriana and Edward were driven to the nearest hospital by random hitchhikers in a large Jeep. Other cars would hardly have been able to travel that way, or rather off-road. Edward spent the night in a chair in the hospital corridor. In the morning, he could hardly wait for the doctor to examine his wife. Alas, the doctor said, "Your wife has something more serious than fatigue or malaise, by the looks of it. I believe a CT scan is required. We don't even have a decent X-ray machine." The elderly doctor sighed and thought about it. "You know what? We'll keep her here for now. We'll help the body gather strength, and you contact a serious medical institution. Then you'll know exactly where you're going, and your wife's trip will be easier. For now, I'd recommend she rest." The frustrated Edward shook the doctor's hand and went to call his relatives, which meant he had almost no time left to look for friends who could help. Calling on all reserves and resources, Edward drove his wife to the regional center and put her in a good clinic. Friends helped. The narrow specialists suspected the same thing from all the symptoms. It was cancer, a death that creeps up and gnaws into the body stealthily, sneakily. After setting aside the time necessary for the examination, Adriana returned home, even though her sister had died of cancer. She so didn't want to believe the damned diagnosis. How could it be? She asked her husband a question for which there was no answer. "I didn't drink, I didn't smoke. I'm perfectly happy in my personal life. I'm doing well at work. It's written that this disease comes from stress and worry." She was sitting down. Sister Anna also thought she was a happy woman. But it happened as it happened. "Lenochka, don't worry." Edward took her hand. "Medicine doesn't stand still. As long as you heal, your body will fight. In the meantime, scientists will come up with a way to finally defeat the disease. We'll fight to the bitter end. We'll beat it." Adriana believed in her husband, otherwise there was no other way to live. He had always been her rock. And now she too felt that she was not alone in the face of the disease. Edward had never given her a reason not to trust him. He had never once in his life failed her in major matters and issues. All decisions were made together in concert, so she threw herself into the fight of her life, drank all possible medicines, used folk remedies, in time to lie down for routine treatment in the hospital. At the same time, she tried to stay awake, to look after herself. In front of my eyes stood the image of a sick sister with faded eyes, waving her hand and eerily indifferent to her appearance. Adriana loved her husband and wanted to remain for him as desirable and sweet as she had always been. She believed that together they would conquer the disease. Edward was touchingly patient, with her dragging through the hard and dark days. When the disease worsened, weeks of remission came quickly as she took walks, watched movies, read books. Every minute she felt her husband's care unfailing and not intrusive. And then there was always her beloved Marquise nearby. She felt the mistress as no one else fluffy friend did not remember the evil, because the owners always left her alone in the cat cattery when they left on a trip or went on a camping trip. But the cat forgave it to people because she was attached to them, and she had already developed an addiction to this mode of existence. She lay down at her mistress's side, rearranged herself on the sore spot, and Callous' soothing purr stroked the fluffy fur at Marquise's side. Adriana was making plans, and that's when she recovered. Thus began her next dreamy evening with Edward. Of course, it wasn't easy for her husband. He had to keep up with work, communicate with the attending Raspberry, doctors, organize appointments for the procedure at home, and cooking, cleaning. I mean, he had to take care of that too. Adriana was helpless at times, and when a little withdrawn, she felt so disgusted with earthly affairs that she wanted to turn to the wall and not see anyone. And again, her favorite Marquise came to her aid. Perhaps those who regard their presence in the house as a healer are right. In any case, on Adriana's soft smile of her cozy creature acted exactly healing. Well, or as happened more and more often, at least soothing. It wasn't like it had been at the beginning of her illness now, when Adriana had dashed to work on good days. What about my boys again? Everything must have smelled like tobacco smoke. And Hope's not mopping the floors well again. I gotta keep an eye on her. It's always a mess in the bathroom. Calm down. My husband laughed. We have no irreplaceable. but immediately faltered under her gaze and coped. "But there are unique ones. This is our Adriana. Jenna, your assistant won't do everything, of course. Like you, she's still a little inexperienced, but she's doing fine. So don't worry, rest and regain your strength. I just bought you some vitamins." And he immediately went to the kitchen, called a bunch of rings, and so switched Adriana's attention to some special overseas fruits. Then, seating her in a corner not far from him, he would prepare dinner. He understood how dreary it was for a sick person to be home alone all day without much to do, and often still suffering from nausea and pain. So the first thing he did was to make sure they were in the same room and close to each other in the evenings. Adriana's assistant had been cooking for a long time. It was a young woman, Jenna, from the neighborhood, a widow with a small child. The child was what made her needy, and at the same time could not work full-time, only studied, formed her part-time, and soon Adriana became convinced that Jenna was diligent in getting into details. She began to trust her with more and more important work. Truth be told, she didn't like it very much. Jenna's manner of talking and loud, annoying laughter. Well, what can you do? It's the new generation. They are so well-mannered and have no complexes, which is also considered to work well and not bad. And still at first Adriana was not worried about her place. No, about the job. Exactly for how they will manage without her. But after all, Edward is well aware of the situation in the office. He reassured her, "You taught yourself the light. And you know very well she's a smart girl. She's trying. So it's all right. We've got a paycheck and a comfortable workplace. You'd think, what else is there?" But recovery didn't come. Periods of good health became less frequent. And in short, the exacerbation of the disease became more frequent and prolonged. Adriana didn't sleep well at night, and from the very beginning of her illness, and asked to be left alone in bed. Her husband moved into the next room without complaint for the night, leaving the door open to hear her if she needed anything. Then the need arose for him to work on some paperwork. When Adriana was well, he was sometimes able to stay late in the workroom. Adriana could walk home alone or go to a cafe with a friend, waiting for him to return for a late dinner. And now he secluded himself in his room. So little by little, the couple began to drift apart. The evenings became quiet. Conversations faded away. What was there to discuss if they didn't go anywhere together, saw nothing, talked to no one? 5 whole years passed in such an environment. A saint would not have been able to endure so long around a sick man. Edward, on the other hand, behaved as always, continued to care for his wife, and was unfailingly even-tempered. Preoccupied with her pain, Adriana never reflected on her husband's behavior, believing it to be as it should be. She took his labors for granted. Sick people are so often selfishly blind to other people's problems. Increasingly, she had to resort to sleeping pills and painkillers. Edward had long ago also handled these himself skillfully, like a professional nurse. Adriana had loved his big, warm hands since her long-ago camping trips. They were the skillful, strong hands of a master of the slain man. Yet the strength in them was special, gentle. Or maybe it seemed that way to Adriana. Today, he was administering her anesthetic. After the injection, the patient lay quietly, turned away as always to the wall, covering her eyelids, listening to what was happening outside. At this time, in the kitchen, where her husband was clearing the table after dinner, his cell phone rang. Edward, in a muffled voice, started the conversation. It became clear who he was talking to: the woman who had come into the company for her Adriana seat. When had she gotten sick? The specifics of the job were so well known to the line that she could guess Edward's interlocutor by 2 or 3 phrases. Yes, this is Jenna, of course, a business conversation. But suddenly his intonation changed, became stealing. Some kind of intimate, barely knowing line. "Well, something sweet," said Edward, muffled by his beautiful baritone. "Everything will be fine. Just a little bit. Be patient tonight." "Of course not. No, I can't. She's asleep for now. But she'll wake up soon." "What are you doing?" I almost shrieked. Edward immediately lowered his voice almost to a whisper. "I'll see you tomorrow morning." Kisses. Adriana couldn't understand what this conversation meant. but everything is clear and understandable. Her husband, and it is an uninspired young relationship. But does it happen like that? How is it possible? This is her husband's own, the only one, the first and the last. He's caring and attentive. It's perfect. Adriana didn't bat an eye herself. Her temples pounded. Caring, attentive. Perfect pretended to be asleep until her husband retired to his room for the night. Then she gathered her strength with great exertion, trying not to make noise, dragged from the mezzanine suitcase, with which once in the happy days of the two of them went to Europe. Her husband was breathing evenly and quietly in the next bedroom. She knew his habit, just put his head on the pillow. He sleeps like a dead man. Already calmer, she gathered his things and neatly stacked the suitcases on the in advance took to the kitchen. An empty one for now. I knew that a full one wouldn't lift him, and I couldn't carry it. Looked around once more the closet shelves. But I think I've packed all the essentials. Till dawn sat in the chair, either in oblivion or in half-drama. But I had no strength to think about what was happening. Grandson crouched, faithful Marquise. Here it was morning. Heard Edward got up and went to the toilet. Then Adriana rose from her seat and went to the kitchen. She poured water into the kettle and lit the gas burner. "You will not drink tea today," she said as if to herself, but she addressed it to her husband. He had just entered the kitchen, wiping his face and neck with a snow-white towel. "Good morning. How did she sleep? Why are you up so early?" He reached out to kiss her, but Adriana pulled away, and he almost tripped over a suitcase. "What's this?" And immediately his face began to lose its features before Adriana's eyes. It was very frightening to see. There was one man standing in front of her, and half a minute later another, completely lost. Disintegrated. A stranger. He understood everything. "Go away," Adriana said calmly. "I heard your conversation. There's a child in there," he said, after a silence. "The son is 3 years old. Forgive me, I couldn't tell you. It would have been too cruel. Did you hope I would die and not find out?" Adriana asked in a strange voice. "I'm sorry, there's no way I can die. Would you have gotten married then? Go away." Edward silently took his suitcase and left. Adriana looked at him and wondered how this dearly loved man was now suddenly a stranger. How could it be? Could it be that she was in some kind of suspended state? Couldn't help crying and cursing her lovers. She froze and then went to the window, then sat in the chair, mindlessly looking in front of herself. To realize what had happened could not. A day later, I went to the hospital in a very bad condition. "Were you under some kind of stress?" the doctor asked, a pretty, dry woman a little younger than Adriana herself. "Not really." Faintly, Adriana answered, although it was clear from her voice that yes, of course it had been. This time the treatment was very hard and slow. The ambulance was called by a neighbor to take Marcus to the usual place. There was no one. Worried about the cat, which for the first time was left without care and supervision, she called her nephew. "Andrew, try to come. Please. I'm begging you, honey. The cat's all alone in there." I didn't have time to warn anyone. Adriana herself did not understand why now. After so many days of loneliness and patience, large tears rolled down her cheeks. Before, she had been like a dried-up pond with cracks at the bottom of her dark, soulless, dried-up neck. Andrew was upset that the aunt was in the hospital again, and promised to come back soon. He was quite satisfied with the stated business trip. When he asked in surprise where Edward was, his nephew had indeed arrived. He was to not only take care of his aunt, but also to become an operative, to listen to Adriana's heavy account of what had happened. "Aunt Adriana," he said, hugging the slimmed down woman, "you are strong. Do you remember how you took care of Mom? How you explained everything well to her? I can't do that. But you realize you have to live. And your uncle? But let him live once. He can do that. You're right." Adriana supported him warmly. "Let him live. How much he's taken care of me. I should be grateful to him." "Really, Andrew?" She peered inquisitively into the young man's eyes, but he averted his gaze. What could he say? How could he? Answers for a strong adult. Everyone makes his own choices. From that day on, the boy helped his aunt in any way he could. He came to her every time she called. He took care of all the cases that required walking to all sorts of authorities. He was the one who talked to the doctors and delivered the medicine. It was good that he was well regarded by his superiors at his workplace, where he worked for the second year after graduating from the institute. Realizing the need to travel, they let him go, gave him time off. Once Andrew came to bring his aunt from the hospital, he decided to clean up so that the apartment was at least clean. He booed the symbol of the floor. When the doorbell rang, Edward stood on the doorstep. "Hello, Andrew, gloomy." He said hello without expressing surprise. "Hi." Andrew was a little confused. "Don't you have a key?" "I do." "Why not?" Edward took a bunch of keys out of his pocket. "It's just inconvenient. I wanted to return it to the line." "Come on in." Andrew moved aside, clearing the passage. "Here are my floors. Aunt Lena's being discharged tomorrow. I thought I'd freshen the air, so to speak." Edward held himself as stiffly as a guest. It was obvious he was uncomfortable. The conversation wasn't going well. Meanwhile, Andrew put a kettle on the table, put cookies, butter, and tea on the table. Having poured it into cups, he moved the guest and made an inviting gesture. "Come on, let's drink tea." All his movements were practiced. Taking care of his mother had given him the skills of housekeeping. The boy got it. Thought he was still on the prowl himself. And here I am. The boy looked at him uncomprehendingly, but his gaze was so bright and guileless that Edward didn't realize how he'd spoken about it. "You may judge me, of course." He began. "Yes, I am a traitor. Adriana is my only love, but it just so happens that this woman—" He hesitated, but he didn't call the light by name. "Turned out to be pregnant. A chance encounter, fleeting. But she wouldn't let me rest. You see, she wouldn't say a word, but she kept looking at me like that. And I was tired. I got weak. It just happened." Andrew listened silently, keeping his eyes open as Edward sighed heavily and clutched his head with both hands resting on his knees. "And then my son was born, and that was it. I couldn't leave them. It's 3 years now." They sat in silence. Then Andrew said, "Uncle, I'm not your judge. You've always helped me. But I know one thing for sure. Aunt Adriana would never have left you. 5-10 years of her whole life she would have been with you." "I know," Edward almost whispered. "I know. That's why I don't apologize. It's hard." Rising from his chair, he put the keys to the tea beside the cup without touching it. Maria listened to Adriana and realized that she didn't want to remain so lonely by her old age. She already wanted to leave this empty apartment, to start living in a different way, to be light at heart, light in the house. She sympathized with Adriana with all her heart and was ready to help her. And so the day came before the trip to the hospital. Adriana had warned her in advance, and Maria came in the evening with the clear intention of taking the cat home with her. Adriana had also prepared in advance. "Maria, Marquise got used to her a long time ago. And here is the rest of the food. True, I haven't been out lately, so it's not much, but I think it's enough for a couple of days. And these are the essentials. These are our Marquesa's favorite toys." She put a ball, a rubber mouse, and a couple of other things next to it. The woman says a long goodbye to her pet. She whispers softly in her ear. Only she can hear the words. Then she let her go, and Marquesa silently climbed into the carrier. "Well, then we're off," Maria said. Finally, taking the bag of belongings in one hand and the other, she walked toward the exit. "Goodbye, Adriana. Have a good day. I'll be sure to call you." Adriana nodded and turned back to the window, holding back tears. Outside the window, a cold autumn rain was falling in unison with her mood. While Maria was carrying Marquise home, she was soaking wet. Wait. The bus in the rain wasn't very pleasant either, so she decided to do the easier thing. She walked. It was warm and cozy to dry in her apartment anyway. Letting the cat out of the carrier, she said welcome to the new home of Marcus. "Now you will be a mistress here to keep order, catch mice. Remember the main thing to remember." Caressing the cat affectionately, she lowered it to the floor and went about her business. She hung up her wet coat and scarf and put her shoes on to dry. Marquise sat by her things at first, Then slowly she began to settle in. She walked around her new home for a long time, looking in all the corners. She did it all in silence. She slept on her own bed, which she had given to Adriana, and from then on she slept only on it. In the morning she went to work. Maria poured her food, poured water, and punished Marcus. "You stay for the mistress." Agreed. "If anything, my dear, not to me all by." And left. The new resident got used to the apartment and the mistress not immediately. Maria didn't know how the Marquesa behaved during the day alone in empty rooms. She would go to her office, return early in the morning and in the evening. Always worried. How was Marquesa without her? Does not yearn for the former dwelling on his native mistress, worried about the health of the cat. But coming in the evening, she made sure that she had eaten a little, but enough not to starve and lose weight. She sighed, then cleaned the litter box and took the white Marcus in her arms. "You're my good sweetheart. I know this is hard for you. You're like a flower that's been transplanted into different soil. Mommy didn't betray you, you know that. That's just the way it is. And I'll take care of you. Don't be sad, my good ones. We'll be friends." Okay. The cat listened and was silent. She hadn't raised her voice once since she'd moved into Maria's apartment. It was strange, confusing, and scary. Maria was worried. Then she decided to calm down and wait. Since the cat was healthy, she didn't show any signs of anxiety. "Why are you so quiet?" I asked. She strokes the soft fur. "That's the kind of Marquesa you eat. I promise you will visit your mommy Marquesa. You just don't get upset." Maria called Adriana several times at the hospital, then sent pictures of Marquise. The woman was very grateful to her, but her voice grew quieter and quieter each time. Several months passed, and then one day close to spring, Maria's call was not answered, nor the next day. Then a man answered the phone. "Hello. Are you calling Aunt Adriana? She's in the hospital. This is her nephew, Andrew." Maria almost shrieked. "This is Maria, a friend of hers. I know she's in the hospital. She's not well." "Hello, Maria. Auntie's gotten worse. She's been unconscious for 2 days." Andrew's voice sounded depressed. "And you've come for a long time. Will you be by her side?" Maria shuffled from foot to foot excitedly, and suddenly had a very strong desire to help Adriana. "I took a vacation. Auntie has no one but me," Andrew explained. How could he know that Maria knew about this detail of Adriana's biography? And Maria made up her mind. "Andrew, will you let me visit her? Let's get something for the doctors to let me into the room. It's not like I'm a relative, and I need to see her, reassure her." "Well, let's try." A little confused from such pressure, Andrew. The girl realized that arguments are necessary. "You see, I have a cat, Adriana Marquesa. I would like to calm her down, tell her about the cat, explain that everything is all right. Maybe it would make her feel better." "Oh, that's what this is about." Andrew was pleased. "You're the girl with the beautiful eyes and the kind heart. I got a reply. She told me about you. Come tomorrow between 2 and 5. I'll tell her you're my fiancé." Maria was embarrassed and confused at the same time. She hadn't expected such compliments, so she could only say, "Thank you until tomorrow." At night, the girl woke up from the fact that in her head from somewhere a vivid picture appeared. In a bright room, she held in her hands a Snow White and a cat, as if the picture had formed. Yes, she must pass to Adriana with the Marcus drive to the hospital. With the cat in the bag was easy. And at the hospital itself, Maria chickened out. She did her best, as visibly as possible, to blink past the grenadier-looking janitor who sat on the passageway to the stairs leading to the rooms for the bedridden. But she was alert, even though there were plenty of visitors. She snatched Maria with a glance and shouted, because apparently she could not speak quietly. "And you, my dear, where are you going?" "To room 202. Maria got agitated again. Thank God, Andrew took care of the pass and called her in advance, warning her that there and there you can get it in hand. Otherwise, the janitor will not let you through. The groom grinned Maria to herself. The Marquise had not failed in the slightest, unaware of the zoo in her bag. The janitor nodded, and Maria began to ascend to the right floor. Here was the lower ward. Quietly opening the door, Maria prepared to see Adriana's dead face. For that reason alone, reality was not listening to her. Adriana lay with her eyes closed. Her mouth was outlined by a thin line of bloodless lips, her breathing almost imperceptibly moving the sheet on her chest. Had there been other patients in the ward, Maria would hardly have been able to recognize the mistress of the Marquesa at once. Thus, she had changed before. Thin and pale, now Adriana's face had quite lost its individual features and had become as if a symbol on Brodsky of the human face. A dream, Maria thought, this is my dream. In the ward, and so completely painted white, was even lighter from the sun, and snow outside the window reigned here impersonal, without life nobility frightening with its perfect network. She had to get used to it first. Maria stood at the door for a moment, then slowly approached the bed. The sick woman carefully took the cat out of her bag, which had not surrendered a sound so far, and carefully placed it on Adriana's bed. The Marquise did not look back at the foreign walls. Immediately she lay down next to her mistress and began licking her hands. Maria was amazed at this instant foundation. My God! She whispered in reverential horror, the Marquise, and recognized her. And then the cat screamed. These sounds could not be called a horse. It was a wild one. Never had Marina heard a cry before either. As if the animal was tormented by terrible pains. Marquise was saying goodbye to her mistress in horror at these heart-rending moans of Marquise. Maria grabbed the cat tightly in an armful and rushed out of the room, then back down the corridor, down the stairs to the exit. Leaving behind her bewilderment, turmoil, and terror, she could no longer see the orderlies and nurses scrambling to the patient's room to see if she could get around on her own. To find the source of the terrible howl, paralyzed and instilled with animal terror. But what became known to her for certain was that Adriana had stopped breathing that very night. Very soon after their Marquesa and hasty escape from the hospital, and Maria, finally certain that it was absolutely right to give the opportunity to say goodbye to two loving each other's souls, human and feline. Then there was the funeral. There were only a small handful of attendants at the funeral ceremony, consisting of neighbors and a few of Worshipful's former co-workers. A young man in his 30s stood close to the casket. His face expressed genuine grief. Maria guessed that it was Andrew. As they began to disperse, Maria approached him to introduce herself and express her condolences. It was a pity that we had to get acquainted under such sad circumstances. She said, "Your aunt loved you very much." "Thank you, Maria," he said, shaking her hand with a light, musician-like movement. "Aunt Adriana was very comforted that you agreed to take care of her cat. She said she was completely at peace now." "Oh, really?" Maria was embarrassed. "It's not good of the Marquesa." "Will you let me visit her?" asked Andrew. "Yes, of course." Maria explained how to get to her from Adriana's house, where Andrew was to stay for the first time, and they said goodbye. At home, Maria sat for a long time without doing or thinking. The cat was already accustomed to meet her mistress at the door and waited patiently for her to separate. The girl went to the armchair, took Marcus in her arms. He would mumble some quiet words or hum some forgotten songs that suddenly came to mind. Such 5 minutes in the evenings became their custom. Marquise received the warmth of human hands, listened with pleasure to the soft female voice. Maria relaxed, stroking the white smooth, cat-like back, and listened to the purr of a non-animal. "Here we are left with you and me alone, Marquise," Maria told me quietly. "Your mother has left, but don't be sad. She's calmed down now. She's well, she's not in pain. And you and I will remember her with a kind word." A few days after Adriana's funeral, Andrew called. Maria invited him to visit, remembering his request to visit the Marquis. In the evening, she hastily set the tea table. There was no need to clean up for the guests' arrival. In the house at Maria Marquise always reigned perfect order. As if in the absence of the mistress, the cat diligently maintained cleanliness and coziness. Andrew came at the agreed time. He brought Marquise a big bag of cat treats and toys. Maria, immediately at the entrance, handed a luxurious bouquet of huge lilies, and she immediately put the fragrant flowers on the middle of the table. The cat treated the generous gifts favorably, even regally. with strokes of her paw and with, tried new balls, then settled down in its accustomed place and watched the pair, conversing still at the table with lovely eyes and a satisfied label. Meanwhile, Andrew took out a bottle of Prosecco. "Maria, what about you?" "Oh, you what?" "No, there isn't." "Never had a need." The hostess was confused. She couldn't tell me that all these years she'd lived lonely without merry company. Frankly speaking, my evenings were no different from those of an old woman, a pensioner. Meanwhile, at work she was quite sociable and was quite attractive. "No way," said Andrew. "Decidedly, the straight line will be drawn. Problem solved. The bottle simply must be opened and drunk. I can't afford any weakness today. How can one not drink good wine with such a beauty on their first meeting?" Maria is lively and cheerful. America has introduced more and more new tools. Try a fork. Here's a knife. Oh, wait. I have a screwdriver. And she giggled, dragging the most valuable, in her opinion, tool that could only exist in the house of an old bachelor. Laughing at his own dexterity, Andrew managed to open the bottle by improvised means. Maria brought out the glasses. The first toast was to acquaintance. Both liked the wine. Then they drank, remembering the departed Adriana. Aunt Lena was only 48, a little less than Mom. Andrew said sadly, "She was my mom for the last few years. She called every day, sent me money, even clothes. She and Uncle Ed bought them for me without me. Aunt Adriana accurately guessed my size and my tastes, Edward. He was at the funeral." Maria asked. "No, I didn't call him." But their mutual coworkers said that he was away with the baby for some kind of baby checkup. You know, Maria, Aunt Adriana didn't say anything about him at the end of his illness. But I think she forgave him. She loved him very much and thought he deserved to be happy with a son, at least in his old age. I guess I'm a maximalist. I can't forgive Uncle Edward. I talk to him whenever I get the chance. I'd even understand to some extent what he did. But you know, Aunt Adriana, she was all straight and honest. No secret criminal anywhere for any money. She should have been happy from start to finish. But it's a cursed disease. I'm sorry we met her so late, Maria replied. I've always dreamed of having a friend. Adriana is older. All the more reason for me to be good to her. Oh, you just didn't see her, young Maria. She was like a light that lit everybody up. She was bright, you know. And she still had a wonderful life. Really, Maria looked up to him. And from what you remember, she gave herself to life to the fullest. That's great. But I always wondered if she was alone. I mean, she had friends, comrades, from way back. She remembered them so warmly. I didn't feel comfortable asking about it. But it was her choice. Maria, Aunt Adriana is a person with a great sense of dignity. Andrew spoke of Lena as if she were alive. When she got sick, she deleted herself from all social media. She stopped even answering her cell phone. She was determined she wasn't going to overshadow other people's lives. Let her friends not see her helplessly weak. And it was only for me that she had to make an exception after chemo. We've always been very close. How could she do without support? It was physically impossible. Andrew confirmed that he would be selling the apartment in 6 months. By law, he was only entitled to it after that period. But today, they felt so good that they didn't want to talk about business or anything sad anymore. Andrew and Marina sat up until almost dawn. It seemed to both of them that they had known each other for a very long time. It was amazing how much they had in common. Movies, favorite songs, poems. They even liked the same writers and poets. Saying goodbye, Andrew suddenly kissed Maria on the cheek. In the afternoon benefits during Maria's lunch break, he called her again. Maria, I was urgently called to work. I'm leaving tonight, and I was so looking forward to meeting you today. What can I do? He said pitifully, so let me come and see you off. Without a second thought, Maria blurted out, and she was very surprised at her own determination. Andrew rejoiced. Really, I wouldn't dream of coming. Come straight from work to my apartment. We'll have dinner together somewhere, and then we'll go to the train station. The evening was very short, but as wonderful as the previous light dinner. Farewell at the train station. And now Maria is home. Caring Andrew himself called and paid for a cab, so that the girl would not be alone on the deserted streets at night. A goodbye kiss completely turns Maria's head. "Marquesa, what shall I do?" said she to her shaggy-haired friend. "I like him so much. How can I live alone now?" Marquesa, reproachfully held in her arms, indignant. "Do you have me?" "Oh, you do." Maria's one life was now filled with a great bright feeling. She joyfully got up in the early morning, looked for her cat, ran to work, completely forgetting about her affairs. By the way, she used to exaggerate this flaw of hers. So Maria decided, looking at herself again and again in the big mirror in the hallway. Even though Andrew was not around, she was still expressing and expanding herself every day. She had to look 100% every minute now. And he called more than once a day, and their conversations were full of those hints, those innuendos that truly bring two people together. They had a life together. They're in the cloudy, ephemeral space that gives air to existence. Maria imagined Andrew beside her. Yes, not handsome he is, but so good. With his gorgeous smile, with his quick movements. And most importantly, he treats her so carefully, as if she were made of something beatable. Vasia anticipates her every move. One sunny and June day, the doorbell rang, expecting no one. Maria in a kerchief and an old robe came to open the sudden guest Andrew. Maria was confused and overjoyed. And here I am. She entered the room in which against custom reigned chaos. Maria decided to paste the wallpaper and freshen things up. In the back of her mind, she was waiting for Andrew to arrive. After all, it would soon be 6 months since Adriana's death. He would have to inherit the apartment. "Now I'll think of something for breakfast," she hurried after the first greetings. "No, Maria, I'm not going to let you do anything on the day I arrive. Get dressed. We're going to a nice place now." They left everything in the same disheveled state and went to a cafe owned by an old acquaintance of Andrew's. Juicy steaks, sparkling wine, fruit. Maria enjoyed everything and marveled at how much pleasantness and pleasure there was in life, and why she thought it wasn't all for her. Andrew opened to her small joys, but also became her great joy. "Do you like it?" he asked Maria lovingly, looking into her face while chewing grapes. Maria only mooed amusedly, showing that she was at the peak of pleasure. Andrew's visit had a practical purpose. He was going to sort out the paperwork. Maria's help in legal matters was just the right thing for him. In the afternoon, they worked well with the papers, made a plan to sell Adriana's apartment. "Honey, you may be wondering why I don't want to move there myself and live next to you," softly asked Andrew, removing from the branches of hair from Maria's neck. The girl was embarrassed. She actually, in the depths of her soul, had been melting the hope that he would do exactly that. And now she suddenly pictured him in the empty corners of the rooms where Adriana had spent so many sorrowful and agonizing months waiting to die. The hopelessness. Everything within those walls had been written by her. Sterile, even the apartment was without life. And despite the light from the large windows, the eerie feeling was so palpable that she didn't notice herself shrieking. No, Andrew, don't live there." He understood her impulse, for that was why he did not think of Adriana's dwelling as his own. "No, Maria, we will live quite differently. I'll do everything for you as you want just now." Maria was afraid. "But it would be worthwhile for a start for you," he poured over the courtiers see in America, laughing at her confusion. "To marry me." Maria laughed. He waved his arms. And now he was already twirling her around the room, and she was laughing, hugging him by the neck. Scraps of old wallpaper were flung into the air too. And this strange salute was happening all by itself, in honor of their happy future union. On the window away from this ugliness sat Regal-Eye White Cat, and condescendingly Axe began Whiskers. What children these people are. In a few months, the young people bought a wonderful house and moved far away from the noisy city. Every evening, Maria had tea in the gazebo near the house. Andrew turned on the speakers and the couple listened to music. Magnificent Marquise always lay in the arms of the new mistress and peaceful purring.
Subscribe and click the bell.
And the airport of a major German city brought a short woman into the crowded spaces of glass and concrete. Alarmed, she looked around and realized that no one was there to greet her, even though she had been promised. Confused, she stopped, not knowing how to make a phone call. She took a Russian-German phrasebook out of her purse. She turned to the policeman. But suddenly, she saw a tall young man approaching her with a blonde woman on his arm. Relieved, she sighed and walked towards him. The man spoke with a noticeable accent. "Good afternoon, Kathy. I'm very glad we've met. I'd like you to meet my sister. She's your future mistress." He nodded his head toward his companion and kissed the guest's hand. "Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Thank you for meeting me." "A little confused," I replied, Kathy. "Sorry I'm late." Michael's hands went wide. He picked up his suitcase, headed for the exit, and the women followed him. They got into a black Mercedes and rushed, it seemed, to our city, where old people walked along the streets without hurry, and young people kissed and embraced. Despite the fact that it was only the end of February, there were lots of flowers all around. It was as if winter had never visited here. "What do you think of our place?" Betty asked, and a smug smile appeared on her face. "A real German town. I like it very much." The guest answered enthusiastically. "Such old buildings are clean and beautiful." "We like it here too," said Smith. "Life is better in Germany, although sometimes it seems a bit too pretentious." The house of Barbara, whom everyone simply called Betty, was furnished with elegant furniture. Everything here was a perfect testimony to the good taste of the owners. The waiter brought breakfast, salad, meat, and coffee. The guests involuntarily admired the well-groomed and delicate face of the hostess. Perfection of features, but could not determine her age. Her aura eyes, even while smiling, emitted a cold gray-blue light, peculiar to people of a very mature age. "It's a lovely day," said Kathy, meaning that everything was going well so far. She had come here on a business invitation and would now be working for this charming lady. After breakfast, they went to see the office in a computerized office where everything knew its place. Everything was provided for fruitful work. Kathy's eyes lit up with delight. "That's wonderful. Did you hire a good designer? We've worked hard for you. You will be not just a secretary, but my right hand. We are interested in connections with firms in Russia." Smith said inspirationally, "We hope that our firm will gain momentum with your arrival." "You're exaggerating. I was very anxious when I came here, but there is no way out." "Yes, your situation is difficult. My family's not so lucky. My husband and I worked in a factory, both with higher education, but the downsizing started, and we lost our jobs. My husband started working as a cab driver, and I became a stewardess. And then I quarreled with a woman on board an airplane, and I was fired immediately." "Yeah, that's terrible. Who was the woman?" "I think it was my mother, but she had this weird reaction to what I said. You know, maybe I'll tell you about it later, but I can't right now." Tears came to my guest's eyes. "But you will. We don't insist." "I understand," I said to diffuse the anger. It seems sympathetic, but in the eyes reflected unwillingness to listen to a woman. "But that's not the point. It's a shame my son was the victim of a $5,000 scam his wife put on him after the divorce. They had a little Dutch flower business, so his daughter-in-law charged him for the whole debt. You know, you can't make that kind of money here. It's hard, but we'll help you any way we can." "Thank you, Michael. I don't know why, but on the airplane, I believed you. I felt you were a good man. We're already Slavs, brothers from the same root." "Good. If that's the case, here's your first assignment," Smith said impatiently. "Here are the papers. You work in any program. I know everything." "All right, sit down. We'll do it all. You can rest when you're done." "What do they say?" "I feel at home, but don't forget you're a guest." "Thank you. You speak Russian pretty well yourself," the woman said. "I got a degree from Moscow University." "You graduated from Moscow University?" "Yes, law school." It was a fun time a long time ago. Okay, goodbye, he said and walked out. Kathy looked around the room and involuntarily thought that people live. I'm on the 5th floor of a paneled house. For 20 years, the roof has been leaking. How many do not get along with him? All for nothing. The ceiling is stained. Went to the neighbors, offered to fold and set up a mansard over the house. But nobody wants to listen. And I mean, what's the money to build with if you can't afford groceries? Betty was bent over her papers and didn't notice Smith come in. He sat down. He looked through the papers. Is there anything wrong? Asked the woman, concerned. Everything's just as it should be. Thank you. You have one more task, he said. I want you to solve this case. He put the paper in front of the worker. I'll do it all. Solved it all. Everything's fine. But your eyes are cloudy. I'll get used to it. It can be fun. It's a lot of work. We're up and down from morning till night. Kathy, she washed the office window. The new boss asked her to do it. She looked out into the street where beautiful cars were coming and going. Opposite, there was a huge supermarket and a stall next to it. There, the fruit was displayed on the street, volatile. Bananas, sunny, shining oranges and tangerines fat. Large berries of blue and green grapes glistened, and fluffy kiwis were snoozing in small boxes, groveling apples. There were many more exotic fruits. Names and flavors Kathy didn't know about. It was like the Garden of Eden in every season. Anything could be bought. Smith entered the room, he said with a smile. Finally, there is a mistress in the house. The window panes are shining. I'm glad you like it, Kathy replied. I look out the window and can't help but admire it. How beautifully organized is your place. Patience and hard work will overcome everything. Kathy jumped from the table, jumped up, and grabbed her lower back. What's the pain? Do you need any medication? The man asked impatiently. It'll go away. How long have you had it? Yeah, I had a bad trip. I've been having some after flights. Tired or something? No, not tired at all. Tired of what? I have to work and work and work, so you don't get bored in a foreign land. All right, you asked me to do the dishes. Our assistant is sick. You know, things happen in a restaurant. You're gonna have to pick up the slack. I hope that doesn't scare you. Dishes, please. I thought you were afraid to work here in a foreign country. I don't think about myself. Son, saving a corpse. You've outlived your usefulness. How old do you think I am? 46. Germans at that age are just starting families, and we wait for retirement, and then we get ready to go to the other world. So young, you have to look at life differently. The humped man's grave will mend his ways. He waved his hand indifferently. Sounds good. I'll remember that. Kathy was washing dishes. The work was familiar and her hands were dexterous, but her face was already tired. A few waiters were scurrying back and forth, bringing dirty plates. Something straight to her. Too bad I don't know the language, she thought. Hell knows what they don't chirp about him. Maybe it's scolding, maybe it's bullying. How much longer am I gonna be here crying? No need to get angry. Be patient. Get over myself. Woman C waved a strand of hair of a dense forehead with a wet hand. Pondered for a moment. Smith appeared behind her back. Asked her how she was doing. B. Kathy smiled tiredly. I'm fine. Michael, I need to call my husband to let him know I'm settled in. You can call. How much will I earn? First 5,000 marks a month, and then we'll see. That's very little, the woman said confusedly. That's net income without rent and food. I need to earn $5,000. Upset, she said. We understand. Everyone has their own problems. Barbara invites herself over for dinner. We'll be there in about 20 minutes. Thank you. The host walked out. The woman started doing the math. It turns out that I need to live here for 2 years to earn the necessary amount, and my visa is only for 3 months. What am I supposed to do? Don't panic. Maybe I'll figure something out in time. The waiter brought some plates. He looked surprised at Kathy, who was preoccupied with her own thoughts. He called out to her. She smiled, hustled over, taking the dirty dishes. Barbara, Smith, Kathy drank coffee from small cups, savoring the aromatic beverage. We had a lot of work tomorrow, Michael said, turning to Kathy. What can you successfully trade in Russia? Anything. And what is the most popular? The same as always, alcohol and cigarettes. We should think about a drink. Do you want wine or cognac? No. Short answer from my sister, Kathy, and you. Thank you. No. Then I'll have one to keep the ideas flowing. The next day, the work continued. Papers abounded. Kathy reread, recited what she had written. It seemed good that only Megger didn't pile up. The beatniks and Barbara came into the room. But things are moving. Work. We must reflect on the important things, Betty said. Listening to you. There was anxiety in the guest's voice. Michael walks around the room, weighs something, and finally says to hire you illegally. It's very risky, not only for us, but you could go to jail. Kathy looked fearfully at her hosts. Don't be nervous. If anything, you should know how to speak properly. You have to ask for it. What Kathy was wary of, you have to ask for political asylum. But when I get home, did a lot of yours come back? Barbara asked. Could I think about it? Think about it. If you don't, you'll leave with nothing. Warned her. I want to consult my husband. Asked the woman hesitantly. What the host said was terrible news. She dialed the phone number with a trembling hand. She heard her husband's voice. Hello, Rick, it's me. Hi, how are you? Yeah, same old, same old. Same as Sam usually is. Is Sophia big? Aha. How are you settling in? Nothing yet. My bosses suggest I ask for political asylum. I don't know what to do. Well, ask for it if you have to. You don't understand. It's a betrayal. Who are you betraying? Homeland. Don't be ridiculous. Somebody is a human being. You're too small a man to fear the country's retribution. But in that case, I don't know when I can go home. Why would you want to come back here? Replied the husband. What are you worried about? You just want to get rid of me. The woman said angrily. I didn't send you there. You made a mess of it yourself. Do you think I should ask for political asylum? Do as you see fit. The husband replied indifferently. My hosts explained to me that if I don't agree to it, I will have to return with nothing, and I will lose everything I spent on the road and visa. The trip was fruitless. I told you you couldn't be trusted. You say it's my fault. Why did I take off if I didn't make the terms clear? They'd promised me a lot of money. You know better than that, don't you? It's up to you. Bye. When Kathy heard the noise on the phone, she said disappointedly, It's called talking. What a terrible thing to do. What am I going to do? Go on this adventure? The imperious look of knocking down Niam pushed Kathy to the dreaded brink, and she still couldn't make up her mind to do something new, she thought. Nothing good. Consulted with her husband. So what? Nothing. Why? Is there no other way out? No. In that case, I have to accept everything. Although my soul doesn't accept it, Kathy replied, and lowered her tear-filled eyes. Michael drove Kathy to the office and handed her over to a policeman. She was led into the office, fingerprinted, and then offered to wash her hands and dry them under the Christmas tree. Passport. The policeman said something and walked out. We have to wait, Smith explained. The interpreter is coming, and I have to go. Don't be sad. The young interpreter, thin and clumsy, began to read the questionnaire. Your first name, last name. Kathy. Year of birth. After the questionnaire, the police officers put her in a jeep and drove her away without explaining anything. She realized that now she was completely dependent on these people. Outside the window floated towns, which imperceptibly passed into villages with the same cozy cottages, red and typical roofs, stretched fields and groves. The pipes of industrial enterprises flashed in the distance. The terrain was flat at first. After that, there were hills, and the beautiful scenery was not at all pleasant. Kathy. She's depressed, thinking that she was being driven too far away from Smith, the only people she knew in Germany. The woman watched the speedometer with fear. The distance from the town where they were staying was steadily increasing. 200,300,400 kilometers. Behind a metal mesh fence stood several pink buildings, a camp for foreigners who had requested political asylum. Kathy was led through a passageway into an office where two clerks sat. The pretty damsel in distress took the camera in hand in a friendly invitation. "Please have a seat." She snagged herself under the lens. In a few seconds, the picture was ready. A full German woman with indifferent eyes behind her glasses pasted it on the pass form. "This is your document." She handed over the pass. "Thank you," Kathy replied confusedly. "Where do I go now?" "It says here." The room Kathy had taken up residence in was like a cheap hotel room with old furniture. She set her things down, looked in the empty closet and refrigerator, sat down on the edge of a chair, said to herself, "German paradise exists only for the citizens of this country, and people like me are superfluous." A feeling of sadness seized her soul. Tears came to her eyes, but she tried to calm herself. She took a photograph out of her bag and set it on the table. Her own eyes, those of her son and granddaughter, looked at her cheerfully. A woman's curiosity made her step out into the hallway, where she ran into a swarthy, dark-haired man and woman who said hello to the first and asked the newcomer, "Where from?" "From Russia," Kathy replied. "And you're good to be around." And there was envy in the woman's voice. "Why do you think so? Do you have any hope of staying here? The Germans treat you with understanding. Did you give them your passport? You should have hidden it for nothing. They would have issued new ones. I didn't know. We didn't know anything at first either." "Where are you from?" Kathy asked. "Georgia." "And how do you like it here?" "Nothing definite. We live in suspense, afraid of being sent back, afraid of everything. But there is hope. Few people are lucky. You have to be able to convince a German that you really need asylum. Otherwise, what's there to say? Are you allowed to go out in the city? Yes, but you have to come back at night. If you want to stay somewhere for a day or more, you have to inform your superiors. Do they give you linens, or do you have to have your own? They'll give you linens and dishes. Go over there." Third door from the stairs. Kathy knocked on the door and entered a room left by a white closet. At the desk sat the island and a German woman to whom Kathy showed the pass. The woman tapped on the computer keys and then handed out 2 bags with all the necessary household stuff, plastic utensils to a mop. With this goodness, the woman returned to her room. Kathy walked out the gatehouse, turned into town. The brick-roofed cottages glistened with new paint. The tips were decorated with flowers. You couldn't even tell if the flowers were real or artificial. It was February outside. She marveled at the luxury of the shop windows, fruit displayed unattended on the sidewalk. She was hungry, but she didn't buy anything. On the hill to the left was a church. Kathy went there. She decided to pray on an empty stomach. Her face was tense, wary, as if in anticipation of trouble. She climbed the steps, crossed herself at the entrance to the church, sat down on a bench, looked around at the white walls decorated with icons, and began to pray. Gradually, the tension was replaced by helplessness and self-pity. Tears ran down her face, bringing relief and peace. In the courtyard of the Kathy camp, passing by 2 young men, she heard them speaking in their native language. She said hello to them. "Hello, fellow countrymen." They responded in a friendly manner. "Where are you from?" "From Krasnoyarsk," Kathy replied. "And I'm from Moscow." "And my friend from Vyborg," said he, nodded his head in the direction of medium height. "How long have you been here?" asked Kathy. "Yes, bored," replied the blonde. "And how long does it keep here?" "Who's as lucky as you are? Some of them have been here for weeks." "In that case, we should get acquainted," a woman offered. "My name is Ethan." The blonde one said his name. "I'm Benjamin," said the other one. "How do you like it here?" asked the woman. "Not good," said Ethan. "No work. They're overstocking me with old stock." No one here is interested in my higher education. What's your specialty? Mechanical engineer. I'm a construction engineer, but you must have worked somewhere. If there's old stock, Kathy noticed. I worked illegally on a Greek construction site for almost 8 months. And then I got caught. Had to apply for political asylum. They brought me here. I only worked 3 days. My bosses didn't even pay me anything. They offered me to give up right away. They said they didn't want to get in trouble for your illegal work. And they lured me with promises. The woman said with resentment, "Everyone looks after himself first and foremost," said Benjamin. "You have no one to take offense at." "You're the one who came here," said Ethan. "How can I run away now?" asked Benjamin. "Across the river. There's a Pole who drives in Moldavia. A lot of them get here that way. They shouldn't come here. You can't get a black job here. Without work and money, there's no life," Ethan said. "What do you mean black jobs are illegal? We're not authorized to do that kind of work." As the group approached, a stocky Negro stared at the woman. "Hello, hello," he said, stretching his lips in a smile. "Hello, hello, more dasty stump and get out of here while you donkey." The Negro walked away disappointed, but he still managed to wink meaningfully. "What are you getting on him?" She was surprised. "He's a dangerous guy. Stay away from him." What a conversation we're having. What kind of life is such a conversation? Benjamin summed it up. "There's a white woman coming from the gatehouse, a blonde in her 40s. That's Kelly. You two haven't met yet." "No. I'll introduce you." "Hey, what's up?" Kelly asked. "Here's the new girl. Nice to meet you." Kelly gave a friendly smile and turned to the men. "What are you guys doing today?" "We're going to look for a job," Benjamin answered gloomily. "Though I know it's a waste of time." "You're not looking for a job. You're looking for a bride," Kelly said. "All your problems will be solved at once. No German woman would marry a beggar. They're all about calculation. You women are lucky. The Germans marry you willingly. Are we so divided that we spend time together with you in the same palace?" Kelly smiled. "We'd go completely wild without you," Ethan said. "You're a comfort." The men said their goodbyes and headed into town, but the women stayed behind. "Have you eaten?" Kelly asked Kathy. "Not yet." A short Caucasian man with an intelligent face and gray hair walked by. He said hello. Kelly whispered an explanation to Kathy. "He's a professor who came to Berlin for a scientific conference and asked for political asylum. He's smart. He'll be able to come up with an important reason and stay here. And if the professor is scattered," Kathy said in surprise, "then we sinners have nothing to be embarrassed about. A man seeks where it is best. I think it's time we had a little refreshment. How's the food here?" "It's not very good. But Germany is a rich country, and Germans love themselves too much. So us commoners can eat what they consider waste." "You mean the dump?" Kathy wrinkled his nose with squeamishness. "Well, yes, almost vegetable stores at the end of the day put out clean containers of fruit, unfit for consumption by German standards. And fruit isn't poisoned. Everyone eats it. No one is squeamish. Isn't there anything else besides what comes from the dump? We get a hot lunch once a day and dry rations, mostly canned food and 800 marks a month. Wouldn't it be good for you to get a job? Do you work?" "I don't need it." "Why not?" "I have a German friend. He's divorcing his wife. We're getting married soon. He supports me." "How long have you lived in Germany?" 10 years. Kathy's face was horrified. Her heart ached. "I wanted to go home to dear Russia. All 10 years illegally. Yes, I worked as a freelancer, cleaning apartments in Germany. And by the way, I won my Carl back. I cleaned their place too. I think it was his wife who reported me to the police. One day I was captured and imprisoned. I had to ask for political asylum. I don't want to stay here forever. I just need to make some money," Kathy said. "You know, Kathy, to get a job legally, you need permission from the authorities to get it in our situation in 2 ways. Make up a plausible legend that you don't have a life in your home country or get married. Kelly, I'm an ordinary woman. I have no interest in the authorities. Besides, I'm married. You love your husband. I'm glad I do. I used to love him, but things evolved. You know, before you get a divorce, you have to weigh things up a lot. What are you talking to me about? I've outlived my time. I'm not a woman anymore. I don't need anyone. How did your husband feel about you going away? He doesn't seem to care. Maybe he has a mistress. He used to. Now I don't know, Kathy shrugged. And you forgave him? Kelly was surprised. I pretended I hadn't noticed. What brings you to Germany? My daughter-in-law put my son in debt. I rushed to save the child. I wanted to pay off the debt as soon as possible. As you can see, not with my luck. I was promised 20,000 marks. I met my boss on an airplane when I was working as a stewardess. For the sake of the children, our women are ready to make all sorts of sacrifices. Germans look at their descendants in a simpler way. And you, when you're German, what's your relationship? Close, Kelly smiled. Divorce in Germany. It's a problem. The procedure takes up to 3 years. How does he treat you well? Germans respect women. I go to see him on Saturday and Sunday. I'd have to visit Michael, who invited me to work and afterwards turned me in. Will they let me in? Maybe they'll let you in, but you don't want to break the rules. Look, what are we standing here for? Let's go to my place for tea, and then we'll go for fruit tonight. Thank you, Kelly. A girl with tearful eyes came out of the building to meet the women. What's wrong? Kathy asked. Is there anything we can do to help? No one can help us anymore. We've been turned down. When do you have to leave? Kelly asked. Within a week. That's final, Kathy said. She shook her head in despair and covered her crying face with her hands. The dining hall was self-service. The line would stretch for lunches. Kathy and Kelly were also here. Benjamin and Ethan came up to them. Did you girls get in line for us? Sure did, Kelly replied. The tall Negro waved his arms and shouted something. They're with us. No need to yell, Kelly reassured him. How's the work going with the boys? Asked Kathy. Empty. Ethan waved his hand doubtfully. I've got to get back. I won't make any money here, but I'll spend what I have. And the family's probably waiting. Kelly remarked. I don't know. My wife and I didn't get along very well. But my daughter's growing up, and I'm trying to do my best for her. They put their plates of soup, rice, side dishes, and sausage on trays, plastic cups of yogurt, and sat down at the table. Kathy sighed and wrinkled her nose. What kind of salty soup? I don't like that kind. The chef here makes this dish on purpose, so you don't have to ask for more, Kelly smiled. Benjamin, why are you so gloomy today? I'm hungry, we'll talk about it then. By the way, there is a case, we'll discuss it after lunch, Kelly suggested. Ayla, Ethan, Kelly and Benjamin left the dining room. The girls are invited for a beer, said Benjamin. Kelly answered with pleasure. They went to the next building. Benjamin had a chicken and skinned room. There were many empty beer cans on the table. The host, with one motion of his hand, sliding in the empty containers, set down 4 bottles of beer and invited a treat. Thanks good-naturedly, Kelly said. The stolen beer didn't stand well, Benjamin replied. Germans don't like thieves. Girls, I'll have some cosmetics. Maybe you can buy some. My German gives me cosmetics. Kelly refused. And I'm still too poor. Kathy said no. Too bad. I was really hoping for you, Kathy suggested. Does she have money? Kelly suggested. And I'll try, said Benjamin. By the way, Kathy is your countrywoman. Kathy said to Kelly from the beer and beer from the bottle. I came to Germany on an invitation to dance. In a bar, stripping and stuff. Now she's getting married, I think. Anyway, she's got money. I should meet her, Kathy said thoughtfully. We'll get to know each other. But she doesn't like to talk about her past. What's in store for all of us? Kathy sighed. We'll see, Ethan replied. Kelly and Kathy walked into the yard of the vegetable store and saw 2 large plastic containers. Bananas were piled in them. According to Kathy's impression, they looked good. Only some blackness had been removed. "Do we have decent bananas at the market for $1 a piece?" Kathy remarked. "The Germans are very careful about the quality of their food. There's a dark spot. It means the banana is rotting and not fit to eat. Didn't we know where to look for good food?" Kathy smiled, putting bananas into a cellophane bag. "You can make a good life. Where are you from?" "Tbilisi, beautiful city. The best city on earth." The women, engrossed in conversation, did not notice that a German came out on the porch and hissed squeamishly. It was all right. Kathy looked up, met the contemptuous look, and asked what he said. "Let's go," and let him suppress with his bananas. Angrily, Kelly said, "I'll take you to another store." Kelly served tea and brought bananas. The women were united by their unsettledness, though hostess and guests smiled at each other in a friendly way. Sadness wrapped their eyes as well, and they could only talk about what they were most concerned about. "I came here to earn money, but I have to sit behind a fence and wait for manna from heaven," Kathy complained. "I don't call home. I don't know what to tell my folks." "Do you need to get a job?" "Where am I gonna find a job when even men can't get a job?" "Let me talk to the foreman," Kelly suggested. "He's sympathetic." "Can you work as a painter?" "I can do it. I always do my own repairs at home," answered Valia readily. "He heads a team that does small repairs." "That would be great. And how could your legend come up with anything?" "The Germans need a certificate." "Where do I get one?" "So you're gonna sit through the return?" Kelly warned me. "What can I do?" "You have to think. Come to your friends. They might be willing to help." "I think we should go," Michael said to Kathy calmly. Who would have thought it would happen like this? It used to be that papers were done quickly, and people started new lives. "What am I going to do?" the woman asked confusedly. "Don't be nervous. Our contract remains unshakable. Go back. The job is waiting for you. What if I get rejected?" "Well, that would be bad luck. But let's hope for the best. I'll call you." "Thank you. I have to get back." "Don't worry. Kathy, be patient." The woman returned to the camp. She was depressed that the circumstances were so bleak. She looked out the window at the foreign land with sadness. The manicured fields of the city's settlement floated by. At one of the stations, a not young man and woman entered. They were talking to each other in Russian. "Where are you from?" "Rejoiced?" asked Kathy from Russia. Smiling, the woman replied, "We are from the Volga region. Long time in Germany. 9 years. You speak Russian all the time?" "It's a habit," the man replied. "How do you like it here?" "But we miss our homeland," the woman replied. "We have friends and relatives left there." "And how are you in Germany?" "I came for 2 weeks to earn money, but I turned into a prisoner. All immigrants go through this now. Be patient." The woman comforted Kathy. The German punctuality didn't work out. "The train is late," the man remarked, glancing at his watch. How alarmed Kathy was by 5 minutes. "I'm not going to make it to the next train. I'm not lucky. Don't worry." The man got up, went to the end of the carriage and returned with the conductor, explaining to her that the woman was late for the next train. The conductress smiled, replied something and made a soothing gesture. "Your train will be delayed for a few minutes. It will come. Shouldn't you be upset?" The man translated what the conductor said. "Is that really possible?" Kathy asked in surprise. "And here it's customary to do one's best for one's own sake. Have you managed to get a job?" "My husband works as an electrical engineer at a substation, and I'm retired," the woman replied. "Do you regret leaving this place?" "I have different thoughts, but I don't want to go back to begging." The train stopped. Kathy said goodbye to her companions and jumped into the car. The country no longer seemed so alien and hostile. The clouds outside the window of the room floated to the east. The woman watched them sadly. "They're coming home to us. What am I doing here?" She took the photograph that stood on the nightstand by the bed and began to talk aloud to him. "Vitalik, my dear son, how hard was it to raise you? So painful was angina, bronchitis, and inflammation. A good boy grew up tall, handsome. How I want to help you, but I can't do anything. I'm sorry. And you, granddaughter, I'm sorry your grandmother is such a loser. She wiped her tears, looking into the faces of her son and granddaughter. There was a knock at the door. A swarthy boy stood behind it and said hello in Russian. Can you help me? All right. What's wrong? My mom's sick. Kathy locked the door, followed the boy into his room, and saw a young brunette on the bed. Hello, I'm your son. Thank you for coming in. I'm Christina. Please sit down. Kathy sat down on the chair, slipped the boy's name, and said my name. Nice to meet you. I noticed you a long time ago. You're beautiful. What beauty? Are you sick? Yes, sciatica. We're poor. Please take my William with you when you go bananas. I will. Thank you. Where did you come from? Kathy asked. I married an Orthodox Christian from Azerbaijan. I changed my faith when my husband died in a car accident. I couldn't bear to live. They say that everything passes, Kathy said. The saddest thing is that I can't get rid of the bad luck. Come and play outside with me all day long. The boy was happy and slipped out the door. Your son is kind, obedient, attentive. She praised the boy. And the child is like a child. I didn't want to talk about him. I was going to Germany to get married. I met a German and went to visit him at his invitation. But he didn't like us. He looked at how much we ate, and the boy is growing up. He has a good appetite. He needs to eat. I had to come here, but my nerves didn't hold up. My spine ached the next morning. I took some painkillers. I'm waiting for my father's pain. I'm a doctor myself. I know that spinal pain is not something to be trifled with. If you need help, you call me. I warned you. Thank you. Will you please look after your son? What if something happens to me? Christina asked. Don't worry. Let's hope for the best. Do you have children? One son is grown up. I envy you so much. Did you get to raise your son? You know, little babies, little squirrels, and big babies, big babies. I'll be sure to take your William if we go bananas. Don't worry, it'll be fine. I'm good with kids. I already have a granddaughter. Kathy and the boy were returning from the store, carrying cellophane bags of fruit on this clear day with a short spring sun and a cloudless sky. The foreign town lives with its own worries. The boy looked around curiously with appetite, eating a banana. Why do the Germans throw away such delicious bananas? He asked. They have too many bananas, and they don't have time to eat them, replied the woman. Lucky me. And do you know that today is the first day of spring, and after that it will be summer? Do you like summer? Summer is hot. I like fall. That's when the mountains are golden. I like to paint them. Do you miss the mountains? Yes, very much. There are mountains in Germany too. We used to go with Uncle Peter. When I grow up, I'll buy a car and we'll go to the mountains with my mom. You have a wonderful mom. You have to help her so she doesn't get sick. I'm doing my best. That's what my dad taught me, but he's gone. Don't be sad. You'll grow up strong and smart. Everything's gonna be okay with mommy. Kathy showed the pass at the gatehouse to Shakhtar and walked with the boy to the yard, where she saw an ambulance. Something's happened, she said. Someone is sick, the boy replied. A woman was carried on a stretcher to the car. The boy rushed to her screaming, Mommy, Mommy. Christina hugged her son and said sternly to William, They are taking me to the hospital. Wait for me and don't go. Alone in the city, you hear? I forbid you. Okay, Mom, what's wrong with you? Asked Kathy. You went, and I tried to get up, and I realized something bad had happened, and I couldn't get up. Good thing a neighbor came by to check on me, so I called a doctor. I probably would have died from the pain. Let William stay with me. Thank you, Christina. I've already made arrangements with the neighbor. Her David is a little younger than my son. They're friends. The boy will stay with them. Thank you very much. Mom, I want to come with you. Through tears, my son asked. Son, be a man, strictly said the mother, kissed her son goodbye, and she was taken away. The boy exclaimed, wiping his eyes with his palms. Authority, the woman took his hand and led him away. Kathy stared at them confusedly. She felt responsible for the boy's fate. Hi, Benjamin said to her. Why are you so upset? Yeah, they took the women to the hospital. She had something wrong with her spine, and the son is left in the care of strangers. Things are bad, but you and I are still alive and well. I have a bottle of champagne. Let's go to your place and dispel the sadness. Where could you get champagne? Where I got it. Where I got it. I made it. Good master. Let's go get some champagne. Pour it into plastic cups. To us, said Benjamin. Did Kathy fix it for you? No, just to us. Here's to you, making this your last stolen bottle. You got something to talk about. Let's have a drink. Kathy tasted the drink and said it was delicious. It's bitter to me, Benjamin objected. What are you implying? I'm lonely. I haven't been with a woman in 100 years, and you're so beautiful. Do you know how old I am? I'm not interested. Real women have no age. Benjamin tried to hug Kathy. She said, Don't, Benjamin, because it makes me want to howl with despair. In that case, let's have another drink. Benjamin sat down on the floor and sang the song, I've been looking for you everywhere. Then he took a bottle of perfume out of his pocket and gave it to the lovely lady as a little present. Thank you. I don't accept stolen goods. Don't insult me. This perfume was advertised today by some company. They were giving it away for free. I took it, thinking of you now, thinking of you a lot. Benjamin wrapped his arms around Sutton's waist and knees and fell silent. The woman invited his hair, something wrinkled on the top of his head, and asked Benjamin, I'm in a nasty mood. Let's forget everything from the heart. No, we never talk about it. My son is almost the same age. What Slavs lack is stiffness. Be well, Benjamin, you'll have everything. Women and children. Just be careful of foolish temptations. Kathy, you look a lot like my mom. You look younger, though. Where does she live? In the country, where women age faster from hard work. We civilians love ourselves more. It's a pity you don't love me. In a brothel, it costs $100. Benjamin, I can't listen to you. Take an example from Ethan. Behave yourself. Benjamin's face lit up with mystery. I get it. Ethan, do you like it better? I'm a cold old woman. I don't need anything. I'll go. Maybe she'll understand me. Benjamin went out. Oleg looked bitterly out the window, then went outside. Ethan walked across the yard towards her. Kathy, where did you go? He asked. To church. Was Kelly looking for you? Do you know why? Go see her. What about you? A woman asked me. I'm sad. Be patient. Don't give in to depression. Everyone wants to stay here, but I'm trying to return to my homeland. As you can see, there's a significant difference. Don't get upset. You'll get rejected and go back to your home country. I bought a car. It's parked in Hamburg. I have to pick it up and get out of here. Leave the address, Kathy smiled. I will. I'll write down your phone number and address. Will we meet sometime? Ethan took a pen and notebook out of his prized pocket, wrote down the necessary information, pulled out a sheet of paper and gave it to the woman. You're going home. Give me a warning. I asked Kathy. I will. Good of you to stop by. Kelly was happy to see me. Kathy, Ethan told me you were looking for me. I talked to the foreman, and he promised to hire you. Really happy? Kathy asked. 30 marks an hour will do you good. It's a bit of a gamble. Inactivity was killing me. Thank you, Kelly. You've made me very happy. Yeah, good. Hey, have you heard from Christina? Kathy asked. Did she have spinal surgery and how did it go? But it seems fine. Maybe she'll get lucky on this one. Poor woman. What can you do? Women are condemned by God to suffer from birth. We have to put up with it. We do have more suffering. But we also have more joy than men, Kathy pointed out. It's getting warmer outside. It's spring. We hardly ever have winter here. When it gets warm, I'll have nothing to wear. She bitterly remarked she'd found a problem. I'll take you to our mouth to find something to wear. Where to? Kathy asked again. I'm not going to the dump. I'm squeamish. Stop wondering. There are good things there. You can find a TV or other appliances. We're not arrogant. We've got Uncle Rockefeller Kelly pushing a noble lady to the dump. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. I interrupted my friend Kathy. I'm not the offending type. Okay, I agree just out of interest to go for that. As you said, fought, reminded Kelly. And so they set off. The now familiar professor showed up. He said hello. Hello, Professor. Did you have a good trip? Kelly asked. Very much so. Good luck to you. The women turned to the hole in the fence, climbed through to the latitude area. Let's go under the shed. There are bales of clothes there. They won't swear at us. If anything, we'll apologize, saying we got lost. Kelly replied with a laugh. There were indeed large bags of clothes under the awnings. The women began to pull out and look at jeans. Triple-decker sweaters. How did I get you in this? Kelly to her chest, a sweatshirt with yellow and brown stripes. Tigress. And you're about this approximately. Kelly threw Kathy a colorful dress. Oh, that's something gypsy. Too bad we don't have a mirror. Next time we'll bring a mirror. Kelly laughed. Look, men's jeans. Maybe they'll fit my husband. I guess they'd be like brand new. I told you so. Kathy bent down. As Kelly sorted through the clothes, she was more careful. Every now and then she glanced toward the building where the guards were. Hearing a sheepdog barking in the distance, she fearfully said, Run. What's wrong? Sheepdog. The dog was already flying towards them. The woman grabbed the selected clothes and rushed to the iron. For a moment, the barking died down. Kelly looked back and saw that the sheepdog was rapidly approaching and shouted, Kathy, hurry, we won't make it in time, it will tear us apart. The sheepdog growled. They dropped their clothes and ran as fast as they could. The women managed to jump the fence but kept running. The sheepdog accompanied them with frantic barking and outside the fence. The next day, Kathy went to work. There she decorated the wall in red overalls and a cap with a large visor. Valak M. Valak swung from top to bottom, painted the gray wall in light lettuce color. In the evening, she passed Schachter's windows. He stopped her, a handsome young man, smiling. Kathy did not understand what the German said, but she herself smiled back. In the yard, she saw William and asked how your mother was. Nothing. She'll be discharged soon. The woman found 2 chocolates in her bag and gave them to the boy. Thank you. He answered and immediately began to hastily unfold the paper. Aunt Dasha is listening now. But David is sick. They won't let him go outside. What's wrong with him? His throat. Will you miss me? Come and visit. Someday. Kathy, slim and beautiful, came out of the entryway and said hello. Hello, Kathy. I've been wanting to chat with you for a long time. We are countrywomen talking how and what. The girl replied ironically. Do you miss home? I want to miss it. My home is where I live better. I'm a child of the planet. I miss you very much. I have a son, a granddaughter. How old is your son? 25. Well, he'll live without you. No, Kathy, children are always children, no matter how old they are. I'm used to being on my own. My father left me when I was 2. I've never seen him since. My stepfather and I didn't see eye to eye. I always wanted to get away from home. My father has his life. I have mine. At least you call them once in a while. On the big holidays, they say you're getting married. A sham marriage is the surest way to stay here. I suggest you do the same. I'm married. Is that a husband? That can't provide you with a decent living. That's our life. Parenting is stupid. Marriage is like eternal slavery. We should respect ourselves and seize the opportunity, if we've already managed to get out of it. So we know what we need, sighed Kathy. I always know. Goodbye, replied the girl and walked towards the gatehouse. Kathy took one look at her and shook her head regretfully. Already from such a young age, the girl had to get away with it, lie, enter into a sham marriage. How could one keep one's soul under such circumstances? The woman went into her room and sat down at the table, wondering if I should have gotten involved in this adventure. I could live here. A foreign language I don't know. A foreign land. No feelings all this evokes in me. I must help my son, but at what cost? There was a knock at the door. Kathy opened it, surprised to see a janitor from the gatehouse on the threshold. He entered the room, stopped, looked at Kathy. That is Scene Frost, he said with a smile, putting his arm around the woman's shoulders, their libido there. Kathy smelled the pleasant odor of expensive deodorant that the German man's clothes smelled like. The janitor. Released from his embrace, she said sternly. Is that what you all say when you're courting? No love at all. Let's be friends if you want to be. Liebe nicht freuen mich. The German raised his eyebrows in surprise. He was swarthy with correct facial features. Handsome. Knew it, so he showed self-assurance. Kathy. Warum? Warum? The guy spoke German fast. Why? Why, Kathy? Kathy shook her head and pointed to the door. The janitor was very surprised by her refusal. However, he tried to hug the woman again. She shivered, spoke quietly and clearly, again pointing her hand at the door. Benjamin Kathy, escorting the German to the door, muttered angrily, "What do I need all this for?" He finally realized that he was finally being rejected. He said goodbye and walked out with a bewildered face. When the door closed behind him, Kathy crossed herself. Save me and keep me safe. He can get me out of here. I'm dependent on everyone here. I should talk to Kelly. Why are you so green? Kelly asked Kathy to let her into her room. Something happened. Something happened. And this asshole from the watch offers love, said Kathy indignantly. What are you thinking about? Have some coffee. Calm down. And calm down here. You refused such a handsome and young German. Kelly laughed. Do you think I should have? I don't think anything. It's just that cunning women in your position take every opportunity. Kelly, I can't do that. But you said no, and you did the right thing. I don't think he really loves you, and he's gonna get back at me. I don't know. I don't think so. You must still love your husband, don't you? With that unapproachable lamb peeking out at you. My son is almost his age. You're silly. Men age quickly. Women should always know how to use their attractiveness. That's sacrilege, Kelly. People live and enjoy themselves. You've buried yourself alive. I'm living without, really, without money, without papers. It makes me want to howl. And then there's these men and their lust. Kathy, you've got it all wrong, don't you? A man 10 years younger than you sees your beauty, decides to help you through your loneliness, warm you up with love. And you into what happened? Why? Kelly was surprised. I have no love, no mood of ill health. What's wrong with your health? Live, started to get very sick. Food doesn't fit. Could be the food, could be your nervousness. You should see a doctor. What about work? The foreman? Let you explain it to him. I'll be patient for a while longer. If it doesn't stop hurting, then don't take too long. Yes, I'm afraid of that janitor. Do you want me to talk to him? Kelly asked. No, don't. Cell phone rings. Hi, you're home already? Overjoyed, said Kathy. How are you? Oh, thank God, I'm fine. I have another joy. We got permission to stay. Good for you. We're leaving. If you settle in well in your new apartment, I'll invite you to visit. Thank you. Happiness to you. Oleg was painting the wall. The roller swung from top to bottom, evenly covering the surface with paint. The tall guy who was working immediately put down his roller, came up to Kathy, and handed her a chocolate bar. Danko woman shook her head negatively. I don't eat chocolate. The man put his arm around her shoulders. Kathy abruptly broke out of the embrace and ran to the side and indignantly shouted, "Only come over. I'll ask you to eat green." She held out a roll in front of her. At this time, Kelly walked in. Asked with a laugh, "Kathy, are you trying to increase the green party?" "No, I'm fighting sex-crazed crocodiles. Did you hear Ethan died?" "Ow," Kathy asked, scared. "He was driving a car and crashed. Some say he fell asleep at the wheel. It's a shame about him, such a young and handsome man, and a family left behind. Such is our life. It's scary to live alone, and it's even worse to die alone. We have to. Ethan, I have an address and a phone number," Kathy remembered. "So you call." "I can't. How can you report something like that?" No. Kathy, think about it. Ethan's dead. He needs to be buried. And the family don't know anything. I can't do it. I don't have the guts. You can't betray Ethan. Okay, I'll try. Kathy, I flipped through my address book, found the entry, dialed the number, heard a woman's voice, said hello, and asked if it was Christina. "Yes. I'm calling from Germany to tell you about Ethan's husband. Something's happened. I'm sorry for your loss." Kathy struggled to get the words out. "Ethan was killed in a car accident." "Ethan, don't joke around like that." "I'm sorry. I'm not joking. Ethan was a good man. He loves you. Daughter was in a hurry to get home. Drove the car, and they say he fell asleep at the wheel." Vanya's sobs were heard in the phone. "Christina, you should definitely come here to take care of Ethan's funeral." "Yes," Kathy sobbed into the phone, barely able to keep from crying. She lowered her voice and said cruelly, "Stop crying, Christina. You need to think about yourself and your daughter. Ethan, waiting for you here. Aya, I'll do anything. You know the address?" "Yes," Ethan wrote to us. "Come, we'll be waiting for you. Goodbye, Kathy," she hung up. "She'll be here. You're good. I couldn't do that." Kelly complimented her, and I was lying on the bed, flipping through a phrase book, memorizing German phrases. There was a knock at the door. A woman opened it. Benjamin came in. "Why are you so sad?" he asked. "Ethan is dead." "Don't make things up in a drunken voice," Benjamin said. "I understand. It's April 1st. It's not, Benjamin. Ethan drove the car and fell asleep. And that there is no Ethan anymore. Holy shit. What the hell kind of life is that? It's a shame. It's a shame." Kelly and I called his wife. She promised to come to his memorial, Benjamin said, and put a bottle of wine on the table. Kathy pulled a few cans of canned goods and fruit from the refrigerator. They drank and snacked. He and I had a nice sit-down the night before his trip. He wanted to see his daughter as soon as possible. You don't have a family, so you bear the separation from your homeland more easily. I have a mother who often dreams about me. When I came here, it was like falling into an abyss. I don't dream about anything. At home, I had colorful dreams every night, like a movie. It's your husband who's giving you the energy. I don't get any energy from him. We've been sleeping in separate rooms for 20 years. Why is that? Yeah, it just happened. When I saw you, I thought I was divorced. Is there something so independent about you? I'm not independent. I'm just a slave in the family. I never thought people would get that impression. Kathy, you make such an impression on me that I'd do anything to please you. Benjamin, I'm nice to you, but don't count on it. You're just messing with me. Enough of this idle talk. Kathy stopped him. Right? Yes, let's drink to the most beautiful woman in Germany to you. Don't lie. I know I'm old and unassuming. You just don't understand anything about female beauty. Benjamin reached out for a hug, and she pulled away. And with the bridge. Ethan, the wife, promised to come. It's a pity for everyone. And you too. You don't live, you exist. Such a woman is a queen. Benjamin lowered his head doomedly. I don't want anything. I just want to pay my son's debt, and then I'll be retired in no time. Retirement. I know what my mom's pension is. We've been robbed of our future, so I'm stealing. To spite the whole world, I'm an extra. Don't you love me? What are you saying? What kind of love can you and I have? We're going our separate ways. I've had it all. And you've just started a life. Kathy resented you. What can you know about the future? There may be my one and only beloved, and nothing else. Ethan has his destiny. You have yours. Go away, Benjamin. It's early in the morning. Kathy turned on the light and began to clear the table. Benjamin stood at the door and said, I'm going to a friend's house. She invited me for coffee. He glanced at the woman, as if to see if she was jealous. She smiled with a smirk. Benjamin jumped out. Kathy was habitually waving a brush, painting a wall in the cafe room. Suddenly, she stopped, holding her stomach. You Felton? Sympathetically asked his partner. Yes, worried Kathy. Looking for the right said in German that she felt a little ill. Kelly appeared on the doorstep and called out, Ella, Ethan. His wife is here. She wants to talk to you. I don't get off work until 300. And Christina's in a hurry to catch a train. What about Ethan's anxiety? Kathy asked. They gave her the ashes in a small urn. Is she crying? No, I think she'd cry all her tears. Why don't we ask the master for you? Kelly suggested it. Try telling him I need to see a doctor. I'm finally going to the doctor. Yeah, I can see I can't put it off. All right, let's go. Kelly knocked on the door and entered the handyman's room. Kathy waited, thinking regretfully that she had a hard time with German, so she couldn't use it fluently and had to find translators. After a few minutes, Kelly came out triumphantly and announced everything is fine. You are free for the rest of the day. And the master has also offered you a new job. What kind of job at the cafe? What am I supposed to do there? Making coffee for our bosses to drink during the break. And afterwards, when everyone goes out, you'll help with the dishes. I think coffee smells better than paint. That's great. But will I be able to please him? Kathy said she had her doubts. You will. You can start tomorrow. Thank you. You're my guardian angel. It was you who conquered the master with your hard work and diligence. Christina was waiting for the women near the gatehouse, sitting on a suitcase. A large bag stood next to it. I brought it in. Kathy, Kelly said. She's the one who called you. Thank you very much, said Christina, taking a step towards Kathy. I'm sorry to interrupt you from your work, but I'm in a hurry. My train will be here soon. I'll see you off and you, Kelly, know. I have to meet Carl. The women headed for the train station. Kathy and Kelly had dinner together. Why aren't you eating? Kelly asked. I had a diet check with the doctor. What's the diagnosis? Ulcer. I'm gonna have to eat more. Eat bananas, canned goods. You can't cure an ulcer. I like bananas. Let's hear it. I'm going out with my German on Saturday. Maybe you want to get checked out with me. I'll tell him to bring a friend with him. Why would I do that? There'll be good food. Nice people. You will. I don't know how these Germans will eat themselves up. We'll sit and talk and go our separate ways. It's interesting to see other people. Okay, but please, no matchmaking. I don't like that. Come on, no one's infringing on your precious independence. Al Jazeera poured coffee into the coffee makers, set the tables, clean, with tablecloths, wiped the cups, looked around the room. She was pleased. The clerk came in, smiled, and praised the goodness. Thank you. Coffee's ready. I can go now. Yes. What kind of coffee? Okay. Kathy smiled and hurried out. How was work at the new place? Kelly asked. It seemed fine. She went to the first one, tasted the coffee, and praised it. It'll be easier for you here. Thanks, Kelly. I'd be dead without you. And with my low blood pressure, coffee is a must. By the way, we've already been invited to the restaurant for Saturday. Our friends are eager to meet us, Kelly said. I'm a little embarrassed. It's gonna be great. You'll see how Germans respect women. She comes to you, brings you a bottle, drinks it herself, and then demands payment in kind. But not everyone is like that most of the time. I understand that poverty has made everyone lose self-respect. What kind of a beggar is a gentleman? But we are rich in soul, and we have only soul capitals left. Kelly said mockingly. Look, your customers are already drunk with coffee. I'll go and wash up after them. It's so warm outside. Kathy sure smiled, her eyes glistening in the bright sunshine. Soon it will be summer. It's beautiful in the mountains now. Kathy on the porch at the cafe was waiting for the bosses. It was obvious from everything that they were satisfied with the coffee. She walked into the empty cafe, put away the dishes, poured herself a cup of coffee, and sat down at the table. Next, she said they liked it. They offered to buy the coffee and thank you. Are you ready? Kelly peeked through the door of Kathy and the room. Yes, come in, Kathy answered, hiding her excitement. Show me. A woman of deep, marvelous beauty stood before Kelly. A long-sleeved black dress was gracefully built up along the bottom. Stanu's russet details and hair was loose for the first time and cascaded marvelously down her back. Delicate gaze, fluffy eyelashes, clear, soft skin. What gave her away was not a woman with a grown son, but a young girl, a beauty. All Germans are yours. I'm not comfortable, Kelly. Keep your tail between your legs. We're the most beautiful and intelligent woman in the world. I see. Installation. I'll give it a shot. All right, everybody. Let's go. The wheels clattered, the train rushed, and Lina rode towards the unknown. Sometimes they talked about something insignificant. Do you love your Carl? Kathy asked. If I didn't love him, I wouldn't be dating him. It took me a long time to choose. Do you know Germans well? How are they different from our men? Germans are not shy to talk about what they feel. Besides, German women know their worth, so their husbands realize that love must be earned. Our men die mostly at a young age because they drink and smoke a lot. More lying on the couch in front of the TV. Kathy supported her friend. Men in general are fickle. Or did he go somewhere else? Or the other one ran away. A woman can't afford it because she's attached to her children. We're approaching. Look, there's our beau over there. How do you like them? How can you tell at once? My friend is a turtle. The women rushed excitedly to the exit. Here we are, cheerfully said Kelly, kissing Carl, the dark male innovator and rather tall guest. That's how the men said hello. Let me introduce you. Mrs. Kathy, said Kelly, playfully looking at the German and her friend. The men kissed Kathy's hand and named themselves. Carl, Friedrich Angel. Nice to meet you too, Kathy replied, looking up at the tall, thin Friedrich. She felt uncomfortable next to him at a height that was only slightly over 1.5 meters. By the horses, Kelly said. No, wait, Kathy stopped her friend. Let's go and look at the timetable. What time is the evening train? We asked for 2 days. I want to be back tonight. You're on it straight, aren't you? Yes, I know the timetable from memory. There's a train at 20:30. Ok. Everyone got into the car, which Carl drove with Kelly next to him. Friedrich and Kathy were in the back seat. Kathy tried to look out of the window, as if she were too attracted by the scenery. Finally, the car stopped outside the restaurant. Friedrich got out first, walked around the car, opened the door, and gave Kathy his hand. Next, he pronounced MT. She thanked excitedly, feeling the warmth of his hand. As they climbed the stairs, Friedrich supported Kathy. At the table, they found themselves opposite each other. Tay was very shy. There was very little of him. Kelly, translate, please. I'm sorry, Mr. Friedrich. I don't know the language, so it's very difficult for me to maintain a conversation with you. Kelly translated. Friedrich smiled and answered briefly. Friedrich says he understands you well with his heart without words. Kathy shyly thanked the still feeling and herself at someone else's party. Kelly leaned over to her and mouthed tacky, stay away. He eats you with his eyes. When they left the restaurant, Kelly said Friedrich is inviting us to his place. No, I'm not going. I said no. What's the big deal? We'll have coffee, sit and talk, see how people live. Kelly, don't talk me into doing whatever you want. Kelly approached the men, explained to them that Kathy wanted to go home, and immediately turned to her friend. "They are very sorry to see you leave. We'll take you to the train station." "Translate, please," Kelly asked Kathy. "I had a good time with you. I thank everyone sincerely." At the gatehouse, Kathy saw Benjamin looking threatening. Kelly went to see the Germans. "What's it to you? I'm the first one in. Why? Is there already a line?" The woman asked sarcastically. "Allah, I love you." "That's enough, Benjamin. What kind of love can there be under these conditions? I understand with the Germans, the conditions are different. They invite you to a cottage. Benjamin, you have no right to humiliate me." Kathy was indignant, and at that moment she saw the attentive eyes of the janitor who had recently confessed his love to her. "Let's get out of here. All our women are looking at us corrupt. It's men who invented this system of existence, where gold and paper money are considered the greatest value. What's there to be offended about? I'm offended that you don't believe in my feelings, but are you interested in my feelings? Or do you think a woman has no right to choose? And I want you to choose me. I don't want anything, okay? I've been married for 26 years. I've seen nothing good in this life, but hard work at the factory and at home. And now I'm here trying to solve the family financial problem. And my husband and son are waiting for me to make money and give it to them. I owe everyone around me. And now I owe you. What kind of brother are you to me? A brother-in-law. There are devils in a quiet swamp. You're drunk. Don't get mad at me, or we'll quarrel. I drank out of grief, you know. I hid my passport in my pillow, and they found it. Now I'm facing rejection. Do you realize that?" Benjamin shouted. He put his arms around Kathy, pressed her against the wall, and kissed her. "Get off." Angrily, she said. "I'm not clinging. A shadow will follow you." "Boy, you don't make people laugh yet." As she was mopping the cafe floor, Kelly came running in. "Hi, Cinderella." "Hey, how's it going?" Kathy asked. "Did Friedrich like you?" "He's divorcing his wife, by the way." "What could he possibly like?" "We didn't even talk," Kathy shrugged. "Men have their own understanding." "What about him?" "Nothing. Attentive and good-looking. Just very tall. Carl told me that Friedrich likes women as small as dolls so that he can carry them in his arms." "That's right, but so does everybody. Yesterday Benjamin almost raped the horny tribe. Saw him all beat up today. He was drunk," said Kathy. "Said he got into a fight with somebody. He's a badass." "Let's go out Saturday," said Kelly. "Our dates want to see us." "I don't want to." "What's wrong with it?" "I'm fine. I'm just embarrassed about myself." "Don't make it up. Think about it. Saturday's a long way off." "Okay, I'm off." Kelly walked out, and I wondered what he hadn't found for you. God, what a man wants. They're all the same. The girl shook her head and brushed that heavy Russian braid off her shoulder. She looked out the window and saw a strange woman in the yard. Next she said to herself, "Oh, here comes the new girl. Maybe a countrywoman is carrying us around the world. We have no refuge. We've lost ours and gained no refuge." Kathy walked through the town. She passed a familiar church she frequented. She went to a shoe store. She tried on a pair of high-heeled shoes. The not young salesman looked at her feet with delight, handed her the shoes, saying her head would light up. Kathy, with signs and words, which she remembered from memorization, explained what kind of shoes she needed, showed what high heels she wanted. "Good, Kathy, good," replied the salesman. "Give the woman shoes." Finally, Kathy chose expensive black shoes with very high heels, trusted them, and it was as if she had grown up. After all, the price? She asked. Finn Feinberg, 500 marks. Kathy looked at the salesman confusedly, but after a moment's thought she waved her hand and paid the money for the purchase. Kathy, as usual, had lunch with Kelly. This time they were in a small room, quite OBG that you know. "Our suitors are preparing a surprise for us," Kelly said. "What kind of surprise?" "How should I know why you're seducing me? You know I'm a weak and curious woman. I'm not eating. I'm giving you a chance to have an interesting time on your free days instead of sitting here. You've seen for yourself that these Germans are decent people. They work at a company that makes transformers. They earn good money. They're happy to do something nice for us. I've noticed, Kelly, that they treat us nicely and with respect. I don't regret coming with you at all. Then put aside your self-importance and agree to ride with us on Saturday. All right, we will, Kathy promised. I can make Friedrich happy that you will, Kelly clarified. You can. Carl said that Friedrich is very impressed with you, so shocked. No one has ever seen him before. And I've prepared for the new meeting, said Kathy. How I bought new shoes. Show me. Kathy pulled a box of shoes out of the closet. Chick, raved Kelly. And hundreds of stamps. Aha. But they're worth it. Worthy. Kathy with shoes walked across the room, majestically beautiful. Great. In those heels you can look down on Friedrich. Kathy took off her shoes and became small again. She said, I don't know how to do anything. Kelly, even though you've been married for so many years, I'm afraid of these games. In short, dark, I am nothing. All clear and just be yourself. I don't need anything more from you. A beautifully assembled Kathy and Kelly walked out the front door. They were greeted with flowers by Carl and Friedrich. There was another couple with them, a tall basketball player girl and a stocky man, about 40 years old. They said hello. Kelly told Kathy to meet Clara and Helmut. Nice to meet you. Kathy gave her hand first to Slaga, and after Helmut, Slaga was invited by Friedrich as an interpreter. For 2 days, this couple will accompany us so you won't be bored, Kelly explained. Thank you, said Kathy, shifting her gaze from Clark to Friedrich. Finally, they got into their cars. Kelly and Carl drove separately. Friedrich sat behind the wheel of the second car. Next to him, Kathy, Clara, and Helmut took the back seat. The cars stopped outside a large store, where even the windows seemed to emit expensive odors. Men invite us women to choose cosmetics as gifts. What anyone likes, said Clara. Thank you. But I don't need anything, replied Kathy. TZ Orbit? Asked Friedrich. Kathy, men want to make us feel good. There's nothing wrong with that. A normal sign of attention, which does not oblige to anything. Trying to indoctrinate her. I can't take the gift. I'm sorry, Clara, I'm so badly brought up. Okay, said Friedrich. Kathy shook her head. Her gaze was so unbreakable that Slaga waved helplessly and plowed out of the car. But immediately Kelly ran up to the car and began to coax you. What are you hiding? Let's at least go and see the goods. Kathy realized she was holding up the group. She got out of the car and headed into the store with everyone else. The windows shone for left many bottles with gold stoppers, colorful boxes, tastefully decorated with amazing artificial flowers. All this delighted and charmed the women. Friedrich asks what you want to buy. Turned Clara. Nothing. And please do not address me with such questions again. Friedrich silently and coldly walked beside her. Kathy took a glance at the store and went outside. Kelly and Clara came out with happy faces. They were discussing something animatedly, carrying brightly colored packages. Look, we have real French perfume, Kelly said excitedly. I'm glad you found gifts to your liking. Kathy smiled back. There was no envy or resentment in her eyes. The group crossed the street and headed for the grocery store. Friedrich walked beside Kathy. He pushed the cart in front of him. From time to time, asking you, what I want to buy, I don't know. Looking at the sausages and hams, at canned fish and vegetables, shrugged. Then Friedrich began to put supplies of his own taste into the cart himself. Also calmly passed by confectionery. Only in the fruit department she could not resist. Stopped, pointing with her hand to grapes, peaches, and bananas. Gut. Rejoiced, Fry began to fill the cart with fruit. Their car was rushing along the highway. Kathy glanced at Friedrich's hands, which confidently controlled the car. She looked ahead at the road, but with a corner of her eye she still watched his face, pleasant and concentrated. We stopped near a small restaurant. The group entered, sat down at a table in a deep, cozy alcove where they were invited. Music was flying, where they could relax and talk. Kathy was seated next to Friedrich. To her right sat Clara as a translator. Pour champagne. The first glass to the women. Carl said a toast. Kathy clinked glasses with Friedrich and other participants of the feast. She bought wine and snacked on chocolate. I didn't feel like eating or drinking. It was nice to feel that there was a man sitting next to her who was looking at her lovingly. Something had finally shifted in her heart. A sudden and young feeling came over the woman. Friedrich is a good man. I've been his friend for a while. I whispered in his ear, Kathy, Clara. But at that time, he was just getting a divorce, and I needed to get my life together right away. So I latched on to someone else because he was single, and you're still on good terms with Friedrich. Yes. What's the big deal? We didn't fight. I just made my choice. How nice for you and Helmut. But I still like Friedrich, she admitted. How did you get to Germany? Asked Kathy. I came here legally from the Russian Germans. Carl announced a new toast to freedom. Friedrich asks what to drink, said Kathy. I have champagne. Answer and wine. I don't care. So why don't you get your wife a gin? What kind of gin? I don't drink. An ulcer. Friedrich was gentle and attentive. He made sure Kathy's plate was never empty. He put appetizers and salad on it. They hardly spoke at all. And when they had to ask something, they used the service of an interpreter. Friedrich is inviting us to his place, said Clara Kathy. And Kelly, she's going to Carl's. What should I tell Friedrich? You agree. And do you think I should go to him in indecision? Kathy asked. He has a lovely house. We can go to the mountains in the evening. It's so beautiful there now. Friedrich waited tensely for an answer. Kathy caught the rapturous gaze of all the men and agreed under the combined attention. I agree. Clara translated her answer, and everyone was satisfied. There was laughter. They raised their glasses again. Friedrich's house stood on a hill. At the edge of the settlement, a lantern was burning above the entrance. Clara and her companion went to the porch. Friedrich lingered by the car, which he had driven into the garage. Kathy wanted to look around, but it was already dark. She walked slowly up the steps and suddenly saw a firefly in the grass. He glowed firefly-like. Kathy exclaimed in surprise. At that time, Friedrich caught up with her and stopped beside her, trying to understand what she was saying. The firefly is right there, she said. Friedrich laughed, and that carefree laugh of his seemed to bring Kathy closer to his soul. Without words, they could understand each other together and rejoice at such a small event. What do you have there? Maybe a treasure dug up? Asked Clara. Firefly is here, said Kathy. Did you find something to be happy about? Slaga replied indifferently. Friedrich's house was large and cozy, and the furniture was so rationally chosen that there didn't seem to be a single superfluous thing. On the walls hung several landscapes. Russia, said the host, pointing to a painting and explaining something to Clara. This painting Friedrich bought from a Russian artist, the translator reported. The painting showed a swamp with cats, frozen trees axe over a shiny black eye. From native landscape, the native landscape made my soul warm. There is a telescope in the same room. Kathy wondered, can I see it? I've never seen the sky through a telescope. Friedrich understood without an interpreter what his guest was asking. Beat, 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 he said. Thank you, replied Kathy. Through the telescope, she saw many lights on the black velvet, and the sky shiny and mysterious. It was as if the stars had gotten closer, magnified, shone brighter. They called to her and promised happiness. Friedrich invited the guests to the table, but everyone was full, so they drank only light wine. Kathy again felt Helmut's insistent gaze on him. She lowered her eyes. The host said something to Helmut. Clara translated. Friedrich asked Helmut not to look at you with such lust. Kathy smiled gratefully at Friedrich. It was the appreciation towards her master that she now felt. His tact and restraint impressed her. Helmut turned on the tape recorder, inviting Clara to dance. It was an old, slow tango. Friedrich bowed his head in a bow to Kathy. She put her hand on his shoulder, and he led her so easily, as if they had danced together all their lives. She thought involuntarily that if someone had led me like that in my life, how well I would live. When the music stopped, she looked at the clock and was surprised that it was already 0 o'clock and time was flying. I didn't notice how the day flashed by either. Thank you all very much. I felt relaxed and good with you. Please translate, Dahlia asked. Friedrich kissed his guest's hand gratefully. Helmut and Delia stayed the night on the first floor, and Friedrich took Kathy upstairs to a bedroom with a wide bed. Populated with a pale pink bedspread, the curtains on the windows were of the same fabric, as if Frau had said Friedrich should good. What does he thank me for? What does he praise me for? Wondered mentally Kathy, feeling an unusual warmth in her chest that developed throughout her body. She answered the jar. Thank you. Friedrich smiled. Hiding the tension, he asked something he shouldn't have voiced out loud. Kathy was silent, looking into his eyes, trying to understand his feelings and translating the words she heard from the German, "We will sleep together." Then she answered unnaturally, stretching her arms out to her father in return. Together, and Friedrich's eyes lit up too lighter behind the face shone Danko meine Frau. He exhaled, embracing her for the first time, and kissed her on the lips. Kathy, for shy, hid her face. Friedrich released her from his arms, looking at her hesitantly. No, I'm not judging. It's okay. Kathy thickly mouthed a quick Kathy and asked for a shower. When she came from the bathroom and sat on the bed, she didn't know how to act. I picked up a magazine, started flipping through it. Well, she was brooding and staring at one point. Maybe pretend to be asleep. Why? I like him. When I got married, I wasn't interested in any man. Suddenly, it's as good as it was when I was young. A cautious knock on the door brought her out of her daze. Come in. Kathy invited her in. Friedrich appeared on the threshold with 2 glasses of wine on a small tray. 1 glass handed Kathy offered to drink. Thank you, Danko, she replied. Friedrich sat on the edge of the bed, sneered with his glass with Kathy, said a traditional German toast. All the more reason to be well, she replied, tasting the wounds with the pleasant flavor of wine. Very good. Thank you. Thank you then. I am happy. You speak our language. Why didn't you admit it before? I memorized a few words. Kathy drank the wine slowly and looked at Friedrich. The wine is wonderful good, she said. You are wonderful, Friedrich replied, taking the empty glass from her hand and kissing her hand. His lips moved down the forearm of their neck with kisses, finally rose to her chin. A hot wave of wine flooded the woman's face, groggy, but turned on in her head, and she lunged toward him in the heat of oblivion. Kathy felt next to Friedrich's big heated body and whispered helplessly, I'm afraid of pregnancy, afraid of baby. Baby and baby. Hurry up and get married. Friedrich laughed, substituting her for himself. In the morning, Friedrich treated the guests. Everyone drank coffee with scones and sandwiches. What are the plans for today? Slaga asked. Friedrich answered her something, and she immediately translated his words to Kathy with a poorly concealed resentment in her voice. Friedrich said that he no longer needed an interpreter. He speaks a little of our language, we understand each other, Kathy replied. I've never heard him say a word. The interpreter was surprised. He learned Russian at school. He must have spoken out of love. Clara replied jealously. Miracles, indeed. The car raced along the winding mountain road. As it climbed up, Kathy looked over the green mountain slopes, then looked happily at Friedrich. He, too, would turn his head to her for a moment now, and then cast a brief amorous glance, and drove the car farther to feel him closer. She put her hand on his knee, his face lit up with a smile. With one hand he drove the car, and with the other he put his hand on Kathy's arm, and tenderness overflowed in his soul. They stopped near an old stone church, Orthodox. Asked Kathy. I answered Friedrich. They entered the cool semi-darkness of the church. Small candles were burning at the icon of the Mother of God. It was empty and quiet, as if this temple with its solemn silence existed only for them. It would be good to get married in this temple. Suddenly thought Kathy, I am married, but not married. The car circled again along the winding mountain road. The marvelous scenery was changing rapidly. Every bush and tree was in bloom. These were the days of general blooming. However, Kathy and Friedrich were so engrossed in each other that they wanted to hide with their happiness in a quiet place from the world. They were taken in by a small restaurant. Stone, not stucco, on the walls of which were decorated with deer antlers. Each table was screened off from the neighboring table, and the bold partitions gave the impression of a quiet corner like a cave or grotto. The waiter brought soft drinks, game, salad, and fruit to the table. Kathy didn't want to eat. That had only happened to her when she was young, when she had reached the feeling of falling in love. She realized with pleasant surprise that she was in love and looked into Friedrich's eyes. He was happy. There were 2 warm fireflies burning in his eyes that expressed love and tenderness. Friedrich embraced the woman and kissed her. In the evening, they sat in Friedrich's study on a wide sofa. Kathy leafed through numerous color albums with reproductions of prints and paintings by famous European artists. How rich is this? The woman said enthusiastically, pointing with her hand at the albums and books. You are the wealth, and this is all yours. Friedrich smiled and kissed her. It's all mine. No, I only want you. My father loved the Frau from Russia. Your father was in love with a Russian girl. So what? After, she was taken to Siberia, and they never met again. Friedrich reached over to the shelf, picked up a large German-Russian dictionary, started looking for the right words. You, be my wife, he asked. Officially, I'm married. I tell my lawyer not to do anything. You will be our wife. Yes, I understand. Mine or Frau, my sunshine. Thank you, Friedrich. You brought me back to life. As a woman, I was dead. I cared only for the happiness of my son and granddaughter. You don't know, I'm a load of babysitting wisdom. You're my little girl, laughed Friedrich. And Friedrich, all you have to do is laugh. I love them. I love them. I love you. Quietly, she answered. Only I'm scared. 3. That this fairy tale of ours will one day suddenly end. Because we belong to different states. Now I know what paradise is. It's when 2 hearts in love meet. Friedrich said something. She did not understand, stopped him at half a word with a long and greedy kiss. Monday morning, Friedrich himself brought Kathy to the gatehouse. They said goodbye tenderly and lightly with the hope of meeting again soon. Thank you, Friedrich, for everything. I'm happier now than I've ever been. See you at the bank, my beautiful Frau. Love you. Kathy hardly got away from Friedrich and went to the gate. She looked back. Friedrich stopped at the car behind Kathy and Friedrich. Both Cindy and Lisa were watching from the office window. They were conversing in German. Those Russian catfish. Soon all our men will be taken apart with anger and contempt, said Lisa. He seemed to have a real crush on her. Not without envy, said Cindy. He's a man of integrity, and judging by the car, wealthy. Men have a stronger penchant for sex than prudence. Soon you won't find a real pure German all over Germany. The odds will be stacked against them. Everyone should live carefully, Cindy objected. Let everyone live where he was born. Then there will be order. Lisa said that mixing blood is a useful thing. These Russians themselves don't color our breed. I'll do everything I can to get her rejected. Kathy brewed coffee in the cafe, preparing the tables, smiling at her thoughts. Cindy entered the room, stood and watched, and afterward Mademoiselle said, Do you know how to eat well? Good afternoon. Yes, I agree, nodded her head Kathy. Come on, God willing. Cindy poured herself a cup of coffee, drank and lauded the delicious coffee. Delicious. Maybe when you get married. No, ma'am. I'm already married, replied Kathy, trying to stop the unnecessary and empty conversation. I have the tables ready. May I go now? Yes, yes, please. Kelly entered Kathy's room and from the doorstep asked how you were not disappointed. I fell in love like a girl in my 20s. Good for you. That's the way to live. Carl said that Friedrich likes you too. We went on a business trip to Berlin for 3 days. Friedrich didn't say anything to me. He didn't know they'd been unexpectedly sent there on something urgent. Did you have much success? Friedrich is thinking of a plan to take you in. He told me he'd consult with his lawyer. I can hire a lawyer. You don't need to, Kelly argued. One here invested so much money in a lawyer. He didn't want to go back to Abkhazia, but he was turned down anyway. Friedrich has his own lawyer. It's more reliable. Kelly, but I'm married. I asked my husband for a divorce. How am I supposed to tell him that? I explained to him very simply that you'd have to get a sham marriage to stay here. I'll think about it. There's nothing to think about, nothing to put off. Let's go now. Kathy was dialing her home phone number. Her fingers were shaking. Kelly stood nearby and encouraged her friend. Calm down. Get your head together. Just say it head on. It'll be easier and more likely to be true. My soul doubled in size, but it was necessary to overcome herself and pretend that nothing had happened. She heard her husband's voice on the phone. Hello. That's what I said, Kathy. Oh, hello. Some friend of yours called, but she didn't explain. I'm guessing it's Christina. I haven't heard anything new yet. Everyone's alive and well. Will you be released soon? I don't know, as long as I'm working. But it's not money. It's tears. It's pathetic. You know Cole. In order for me to stay here, I'll have to enter into a fake marriage with a German. Where will you get a German? My acquaintances marry for a small fee. She promised to arrange a fake marriage for me. You won't mind. Do whatever you want. But to do that, we have to get a divorce. Divorce. I'll call you later and let you know what to do. Hi, Jack, and kiss Kara. Kathy hung up the phone and said ironically, got a marriage license from her own husband to marry Friedrich. How do you like it? It's fine. Did you get what you wanted? Happy? Kelly stated, you know, when you get down to it, my marriage to Sam has been a sham for a long time. We lived and put up with each other. There was just nowhere else to go. When did it start? When he came home from work. He even named his granddaughter after her. Thought I had no idea. Kathy, you're so poor. You got one Friedrich left, said Kelly. I didn't have anyone else. Did you forget Benjamin? Don't give me Benjamin. I'm kidding. Benjamin was taken to jail, caught stealing. I warned him so many times. Too bad for the guy, Kathy said regretfully. It would have ended this way sooner or later. Such is fate. Kathy waited impatiently for Saturday. She was learning German phrases, preparing tender words for Friedrich. Every spare minute she gave to this occupation. There was a knock at the door. Kathy opened the door and saw the servants. Mrs. Kathy, have you received a refusal? You must take your things and move out. Kathy looked confused, not wanting to believe what she was hearing. Go where? She asked. It's not for us to decide. Mademoiselle, I can't just leave. I have to make a phone call to consult with Friedrich. Mrs. Kathy, it's time to pack quickly. No, I'm not going. What's the hurry? Quickly, quickly, come on, or the policeman might arrest you. Cindy was in a hurry, and Kathy began to pack her things in doom. The police van took a long time to get there. When it crossed the border into Holland, Kathy realized I was being taken to the country where I had a visa. From there, I must return home. How could I warn Friedrich? Only happiness began to smile on me. How did everything suddenly come to an end? The minibus stopped outside a 2-story building. The policeman who accompanied Kathy led her to an official's office. An interpreter was called, who informed her if you don't have money for a ticket, we can deport you. I'll buy the ticket myself. You are alone in a foreign country. We'd like to make your temporary life easier. There's a women's charity organization here in town that helps people like you. We can introduce you to a representative. They'd be very grateful. The interpreter led Kathy into another room where a pleasant young woman sat at a table. I'd like you to meet Miranda. Kathy shook the woman's hand, gave her name. I invite, will you? My guest is smiling, said Miranda. The woman's eyes were sympathetic and eager to help. Kathy thanked her and felt lighter in her heart. Do you want to buy a plane ticket? Miranda asked. Yes, here's the money afterwards. What else would you like? I need to make a phone call in Germany. Please, Miranda slid the phone closer to Kathy and walked out. Kathy anxiously dialed Friedrich's home phone number. He wasn't home. The answering machine went off. She said a few simple phrases that she could leave unspoken. That she had been taken out. Asked him to write to her. Gave her address. At home, Miranda introduced Kathy to her twin son, Cinny, and a white-haired boy of about 7. That's my son, said the Dutch woman. The boys were playing with the computer. They nodded their heads in greeting and turned the monitor screen again, paying no attention to the strange aunt. Such random women must have gotten in here quite often. They walked around the rooms of well-groomed, womanly hands. Bright and cozy, Kathy praised enthusiastically. It's a terrific house. Very beautiful. You're a marvelous hostess. Is this your room? Said Miranda. Opens the door to a large room, and the bath is across the hall. Relax, dinner's coming soon. Thank you, Miranda. You're very kind. I thanked her sincerely. Left alone, Kathy went to the window, looked down at the neatly trimmed lawn, at the flower bed of roses, at the old tree under the window. Everything reeked of stability, calm, and harmony. For the first time in many years, I met a man I loved and needed. Why were we separated? I could run away to him. Yes, run away. But then I'd have to live illegally. Friedrich would get in trouble for me. You can't do that. The law is the law. You can't be guided by homeless impulses. I must return to my homeland. The homeland is like a mother who welcomes us, maimed and traitorous. If Friedrich loves me, we'll meet again. But now I am forbidden to visit Germany for 5 years. 5 years of days of loneliness. My God, we can meet in Russia. She walked across the room, went back to the window, looked sadly at the sky. Someone almighty was judging her fate and determining the share of happiness she deserved. Familiarize yourself, please. This is Thomas. My husband, said Miranda, introducing Kathy to the young man, athletic build. He was buying a ticket for departure. Tomorrow night. Thomas, show you the city. Thank you very much. I've brought you so much trouble. It's no trouble at all. Thomas doesn't know your language. He eats taciturn. I'm not very talkative either, thankfully, Kathy replied. The car drove her through the streets of beautiful and clean Amsterdam, and from the roofs of the old buildings, glass and concrete of modern neighborhoods coexisted in marvelous harmony and were a delight to the eye. Thomas was trapped. Only occasionally he would point his hand at some notable building. Kathy didn't always have time to realize where she should be looking, but the car kept going. The panorama outside the window was changing rapidly. I can see why they're fiddling with me, the woman thought. They are protecting themselves and their country from strangers and people who are not needed here. Every nation should take such care of its homeland. The Dutch are also willing to share kindness with people from other countries. This kindness does not humiliate or hurt me. They understand, forgive, and help. This is what can be called humanity. The airplane accelerated on the runway and rose into the evening sky, covered in clouds. Kathy looked down. The city hung with many lights. There remained Miranda Thomas and their 2 blew their sons. They were just a random episode in her life somewhere. Friedrich. What about after the plane rose above the clouds that covered the ground like huge snowdrifts? Kathy looked out the porthole and thought the clouds looked very heavy and solid. But that's a deception. They are as ephemeral as our hopes. In a few months, I had lived another life, and suddenly it was over like a dream. The woman tiredly closed her eyes. She must have fallen asleep when she looked out the porthole again, saw her native expanse. The heart fell into place. When she arrived, she divorced her husband and even inherited her mother's apartment. That is, strange women on board the airplane who hysterically screamed at the entire cabin that the stewardess almost killed her and instead of a photo card saw a knife. It turned out that the mother was in treatment for a long time. Then she came out to Kathy when she was in Germany and managed to write off her inheritance. Kathy even went to the cemetery, took the same picture to the grave in the cemetery. It started here and ended here. One day she heard a persistent knock on the door. Her heart hammered in anxious, joyful anticipation. She opened the door and behind her stood Friedrich with a bouquet of fire lilies.